Nia Carter's hands trembled as the principal slid a failing grade across the desk for the project she'd spent months building alone. Ethan Blake, her white classmate, stood beside her, smiling as he was praised for saving the team. The truth was in the code, but the school refused to open the files. And in 24 hours, Nia had to decide, stay silent and lose everything, or expose him and risk it all. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The hum of the computer lab carried a strange kind of urgency that morning, not the usual low buzz of tired seniors staring at screens, but the taut, electric current of a countdown. The school's annual senior year capstone project presentations were less than a week away, and in the world of Jefferson High's computer science program, that week meant the difference between college scholarships and summer jobs at fast food counters. For Nia Carter, that week felt like it would decide her life. She sat hunched over her laptop in the back corner of the lab, her hair pulled into a sleek bun, her fingers flying over the keyboard like they had memorized every pathway in the code. She wasn't just writing lines of JavaScript, she was weaving a story into the software, making it elegant, intuitive, alive. Every keystroke felt like a statement. I belong here. I earned this. Nia was 17, sharp-eyed and sharp-witted, a girl from Atlanta who'd been coding since she was 11. The daughter of a postal worker and a nursing assistant, she carried the pride of her whole neighborhood on her shoulders. People back home called her the girl who was going to make it to Silicon Valley. That faith came with weight. She could feel it pressing against her every time she sat down to work. Across the room, her project partner, Ethan Blake, leaned back in his chair like he had all the time in the world. Blonde hair perfectly messy, sneakers kicked up on the desk, scrolling his phone with one hand, and sipping an iced latte with the other. Ethan wasn't bad at coding, when he actually tried. But most of the time he didn't. He didn't need to. His father was an executive at a tech firm. His mother chaired the district's education foundation. And Ethan had grown up believing that doors just opened for him. Remember, class. Mr. Higgins' voice cut through the chatter. Your final project presentation will determine your grade for this course. That grade will be factored into your transcripts, and in some of your cases, directly into scholarship decisions. There will be zero tolerance for incomplete work. You either deliver or you fail. Nia's stomach tightened. She already had an offer letter from a top-tier computer science program, but it came with a big pending final grades note. One misstep here, one failure, and that door could slam shut before she ever stepped through it. Mr. Higgins clapped his hands. Ethan, Nia, how's our software running? Before Nia could answer, Ethan spoke up, his tone dripping with ease. We're good, Mr. H. Code's practically done. Just polishing some UI stuff. Nia's eyes flicked toward him, a sharp flash of disbelief. We? She said quietly, under her breath. Ethan turned, grinning. Relax, Carter. We're a team. It wasn't the words. It was the way he said them. Like she should be grateful he was even on her team. And then the kicker. Besides, Ethan added casually, voice low enough for only her to hear, you've already got your diversity admissions thing working for you. This project's just a formality, right? The words landed like grit in her teeth. She'd heard versions of that her whole life. The implication that every door she'd walked through had been cracked open not by her skill but by pity. She bit the inside of her cheek, forcing herself to focus on the code in front of her. By the time lunch rolled around, Nia had spent 3 solid hours debugging a stubborn function that controlled the core of their project, a real-time campus safety alert app. It wasn't just a school assignment. She'd designed it with her own younger brother in mind, thinking of how fast an alert system could save lives in an emergency. Every piece mattered. Ethan, meanwhile, had left to grab food, and returned 45 minutes later smelling faintly of cologne and fries, a smudge of ketchup on his laptop's trackpad. You even opened the repo today? Nia asked without looking up. Chill, Ethan said, sliding into his chair. I'll merge my stuff tonight. Got other assignments too, you know. Nia's jaw tightened. She'd been in enough group projects to know exactly what I'll merge my stuff tonight meant. At 3:15 p.m., the final bell rang, and the room emptied in waves. Nia stayed behind, letting the quiet settle. She plugged in her headphones and pulled up the shared repository, the cloud-based folder where all of their code lived. She liked checking it before she left, just to make sure nothing broke overnight. Her fingers moved on autopilot, navigating through the directories, until they froze. Something was wrong. Half the files were gone. At first she thought maybe her Wi-Fi was glitching, but when she refreshed, the empty spaces remained. Key functions, modules, entire branches of the project, missing, vanished. She clicked into the version history, her heart hammering harder with each second. The latest commit had been made less than an hour ago, by Ethan Blake. Her pulse spiked. Not only were the files gone, but the commit message was chillingly vague. Clean up before final version. She stared at the screen, cold realization creeping over her like a shadow. Those files weren't just deleted. They had been replaced. And whatever Ethan had uploaded, it wasn't the project they'd built together. For a long, sharp moment, she couldn't move. She just sat there, the glow of the monitor throwing pale light across her face. The silence of the empty lab pressing in on her. Every nerve in her body screamed at her to check exactly what he'd changed. Her fingers finally twitched toward the keyboard. She opened one of the new files. Lines of code scrolled down the screen. Messy, incomplete, clumsy in ways Ethan never admitted to being. And buried in the comments section at the top, like a signature, was his name. Ethan Blake, lead developer. Her breath caught in her throat. The lab door creaked behind her. Footsteps. And then a voice. Smooth and almost amused, just over her shoulder. Working late, Carter. Nia's eyes stayed locked on the screen, the flicker of fluorescent lights above making the lines of Ethan's code blur in her vision. The cursor blinked at her like it was mocking her, each pulse a reminder that her hours, her late nights, her entire contribution, had been stripped away. Her fingers scrolled down instinctively, but the more she looked, the more the hollowness grew in her chest. The once dense, efficient code she had written, organized into neat functions, each piece named with care, had been replaced by crude placeholders, half-complete logic, and redundant loops. It wasn't just sloppy, it was unrecognizable. Ethan, she said, voice low but edged with steel. He leaned against the desk beside her, casual as if they were talking about lunch plans. Yeah? What did you do to the repository? He feigned confusion, tilting his head like she'd just spoken another language. I told you. Cleaned it up, merged my stuff in. It's called teamwork, Carter. This isn't cleanup, she shot back. You deleted half the modules, all the database calls, the encryption functions gone. He gave a short laugh, one of those half chuckles people use when they want you to feel ridiculous. Relax. I just reorganized it. My way's better. You get too perfectionist about stuff that doesn't matter. Her hands curled slightly on the desk. Security and functionality matter when it's the whole point of the project. Ethan shrugged. Well, maybe if you'd trusted me to handle more of the heavy lifting earlier, we wouldn't be in crunch mode now. That was it. The rewriting of history. The casual erasure of the weeks she had spent writing every core feature while he showed up late and left early. And now, somehow, she was supposed to believe this was her fault. I'm putting my work back, she said. Not a good idea, he replied, his voice suddenly carrying that subtle, sharp edge that people mistake for politeness. Mr. Higgins already knows I've been working on the final build. He's expecting this version. Her chest tightened. You told him you finished the project? Because I did. Ethan's eyes met hers. Steady, unblinking. Look, I don't want to make this messy. We're both gonna get credit. Just don't overreact. The door opened again, and Mr. Higgins stepped inside, his expression half distracted, papers in one hand. Everything good here? Ethan straightened immediately, his tone slipping into easy confidence. Yeah, we're in great shape, sir. I've got the final code ready to present. Nia swiveled in her chair. Mr. Higgins, this isn't the final code. The files I wrote. Ethan cut in smoothly. She's just worried because I reorganized things. You know how it is, different coding styles. I streamlined it. Mr. Higgins frowned faintly but nodded toward Ethan. If you've got it under control, that's good news. We can't afford bugs on presentation day. Nia felt the words hit like a punch. The teacher wasn't even looking at her now. His focus was entirely on Ethan, on the reassurance he offered so easily. Mr. Higgins, you don't understand. She tried again. Carter, Higgins said, still distracted. I've taught you long enough to know you're detail-oriented. But trust your partner here. Sometimes it's better to not overcomplicate things. Overcomplicate. The word stung. It was the same dismissive tone she'd heard before, the one that translated to you're making this a bigger deal than it is. Ethan gave her a look, part smirk, part warning. After Higgins left, silence pooled between them, heavy and suffocating. You see how easy that was, Ethan said softly. One conversation, and everyone's calm. That's how you get through these things, Carter. No drama. She bit back the urge to tell him what she really thought, that what he called no drama was just people believing him without question. That his calm confidence wasn't skill, it was privilege. Instead, she turned back to her laptop. Her mind raced. She could restore the old files from her own device, but without proof that she'd written them first, it would just be her word against his. And right now, in Higgins' eyes, Ethan's word was gold. Her heart pounded harder. How do you prove your worth when your truth is doubted? She navigated deeper into the repository's hidden folders, the ones Ethan clearly hadn't bothered to touch. And then she saw it, a compressed backup file tucked away in a directory he hadn't renamed. Her breath caught. If this was what she thought it was, it could save her. She double-clicked. The zip file opened slowly, like it knew how badly she needed it. Inside were her original modules. Every encryption function, every polished database call, every line of the code she'd spent months crafting. Her relief was immediate, until she scrolled to the metadata. The author field didn't say Nia Carter. It said Ethan Blake, lead developer. The screen still glowed with that one line. Ethan Blake, lead developer, and in its cold certainty, Nia felt time loosen, spill backward. The words didn't appear from nowhere. They had been prepared for, scaffolded, rehearsed in rooms where she was doing the work, and he was doing the talking. The proof sat in her chest like a swallowed stone, and memory opened like a file tree. 3 weeks earlier, the project was nothing but a sketch on a whiteboard, and a promise in her notebook. Nia had mapped it all, a real-time campus safety app, with encrypted alerts, anonymized reporting, and a dashboard for staff. She knew where the bottlenecks would be, which libraries would need careful integration, how to keep latency low on old-school hardware. Ethan had nodded along in their first planning meeting, tapping his pen, eyes already wandering to the windows. Looks solid, he'd said, casual. You code fast. I'll handle the pitch and polish. You'll handle the database and push notifications, she'd corrected, marking boxes on the board. We divide features. We both deliver. He'd smiled like a person who had never been told no. For sure. I'll spin up Firebase tonight. He did not. That first weekend, she worked until her eyes burned, wrote the encryption layer, implemented an event queue, normalized their schema. Ethan texted Sunday at 11:38 p.m., buried in SAT prep. My bad. I'll catch up this week. Monday he arrived late to their after-school check-in, with an iced matcha and a story about traffic. When she slid the laptop toward him and said, "Your turn," he said, "I'll do it at home. I think better on my own." She believed him because she had to. Belief was the only way a group project could move. But by Tuesday night she was writing the push service herself, because the demo block wouldn't stand without it. She documented every function with clean comments, kept her variable names human-readable, left studios in bright capital letters for Ethan. He sent a thumbs-up emoji. On Wednesday their classmates drifted by the lab table, curious. "Look at Nia grinding," said Mason from robotics. A grin stuck to his voice. "Some folks are just built for this," added Jamie, eyes cutting to Ethan with an air of conspiratorial joke. "Big picture people, am I right?" Ethan lifted both hands, laughing. Hey, I'm doing my part." Mason smirked. "You're the face. She's the engine. Classic duo. Or the diversity hire in the project lead." Someone whispered near the 3D printers, low enough to disappear into machine noise if you wanted it to. Nia heard it. She kept typing. The keys were an alibi for anger. After school that Friday, she stayed until the custodian clicked off the hallway lights. The world beyond the lab turned blue. She tidied their repo, pushed clean commits, and wrote a bare-bones UI so they could test the flow. Ethan ghosted the check-in again. Late dinner with donors, his text said, and her chest tightened, not with jealousy but with recognition. He knew the rooms to be in. She knew the rooms to build. The next Monday he arrived buzzing. "I talked to Miss Fallon," he said, dropping into the chair beside her. "She's on the capstone committee this year. I ran through our concept with her. She thinks the pitch is fire." "You ran through it?" Nia asked, pausing her code. "As in, presented it without me." "It wasn't formal," he said quickly. "We were just chatting. I gave credit. It's our thing." He didn't say how the conversation would travel. How Ms. Fallon would name him casually in a staff room. Ethan's building that safety app. And how those words would set in the minds of people who made decisions. Nia felt the old lessons stirring, the one that lived beneath her skin, When credit floats, it clings to the nearest person who believes it belongs to them. To protect herself, she built a ritual. Each night she screen-recorded her work sessions, narrated softly like a tutor, implementing the cryptographic salt, verifying token expiry, refactoring the message broker. She saved the videos with timestamps, 2 backups, and a copy on a flash drive under her pillow. It made her feel paranoid and safe at once. Midweek, Ethan finally committed code. The diff was small, a login form and a splash screen. His commit message read, Core UI, major progress. She read it twice, then swallowed the hurt like medicine. Looks decent, she told him, because feedback should be honest even when it stung. You see, he said, grinning. Teamwork. On Thursday, their class did peer check-ins. Mr. Higgins made rounds, cheerful, a little rushed. How's the duo? He asked, hands on his hips. Backhand's solid, Ethan said smoothly. I've just got to integrate notifications. Nia's got the, He twirled his hand in the air, a smoke signal of words. The algorithms, Nia said evenly, encryption and queue management, are done. I'm optimizing message delivery. Perfect, Higgins replied, eyes flicking to Ethan's tidy splash screen. Looks presentable. Don't forget, the judges respond to a story. Got it, Ethan said, leaning forward, catching the teacher's gaze. I've been refining the narrative. Nia felt herself recede an inch, like her chair had slid back on its own. In the second week, he missed 2 meetings for baseball, and one for a dentist appointment that turned into an Instagram photo. Him at a cafe, laptop open, captioned grind mode. That Saturday, her cousin sent her a DM. Isn't this your project? The link led to a local hackathon's highlights reel. There was Ethan, standing under fluorescent lights, microphone in hand, demoing a prototype of a real-time school alert app. The interface was rougher, the features thinner, but the skeleton was hers. He said we freely, recycled lines from their planning document, and ended with a joke about keeping campuses sane. He won Best Prototype. A smiling judge in the video said, "This kid's leadership is the real deal." The comments sizzled with congratulation. In the group photo, Ethan held a brushed aluminum plaque like it had always been his. Nia watched the clip 3 times, the skin on her arms prickling. She clicked to the sponsor page, and her throat went dry when she recognized a logo. Blake and Anders Tech, Ethan's father's firm, listed as a donor. So the room had been built by his family, and inside it he'd pitched her outline as proof of his leadership. The twist wasn't that he'd presented, it was that he'd secured a ribbon for it. The narrative had an award now. Monday at school, she confronted him in the lab, voice calm, spine stiff. You presented our app at the Blake and Anders hackathon. Relax, he said, palms up. It was an early prototype. I shouted you out. I watched the video. He blinked, then shrugged. The smallest concession. I couldn't control the edit. Besides, it was strategy. We needed visibility. We needed consent, she replied. And integrity. He smiled, and she felt the temperature drop. Integrity is finishing the project. The comment traveled without him. By lunch, she could feel the change in the way people spoke near her. Nia's brilliant but intense. A girl from yearbook said at a water fountain, thinking the word intense was a compliment. You know how some people just don't vibe with teams, added a boy from AP Calc, neutrally. Like describing weather, when the robotics club published a list of capstone leaders on their bulletin board. The entry for the safety app read, Lead, Ethan Blake. Dev, Nia Carter. Someone had penned diversity win pink marker beside her name, with a little heart. It looked like love. It felt like a brew. The third week, deadlines began to breathe down every hallway. Higgins posted the presentation schedule. Teams practiced with borrowed projectors, laptops wheezing, cables snaking across floors. Nia kept coding. Every line lean and justified. Ethan became omnipresent. Not at the keyboard, but in conversations. Blake's on fire, Mason said. He's like born to pitch. Miss Fallon stopped by their table and said, Can't wait to see Ethan lead the room. She added to Nia, Your steadiness is such an asset. Not everyone can be the front person. That night, at home, Nia opened her recordings and watched herself working, cursor flying, code compiling, and felt a strange dual existence. On screen, she was indisputable. Out there, she was negotiable. She saved the files anyway, because proof mattered even when people didn't want it. Then came the day of the small surprise demo in class. A dry run. Higgins asked for volunteers to present 2-minute teasers. Ethan's hand rose before Nia could breathe. He walked up, unplugged the team's HDMI with a friendly "sorry bro," and connected his own laptop. He spoke fluidly, performed the problem, sold the solution, charmed the room. When he ran the demo, the app crashed on login, because the backend API Nia had secured wasn't properly called in his local build. He breezed past it. "We're refactoring authentication," he said, like a CEO in a quarterly call. Higgins nodded solemnly, impressed by the calm, and wrote "strong leadership under pressure" in his notebook. On the walk back to their table, Ethan leaned over and murmured, "Trust me, you don't want to be the one up there when something glitches." She looked at him like he'd tilted gravity. "I'm the one who can fix it when it does." "Exactly," he said, satisfied. "We play our roles." Her phone buzzed with an email alert. Subject: internship inquiry. It was from a city startup incubator. They'd seen Ethan's hackathon clip and wanted to talk to the student who led the safety app prototype. There was a line about opportunities for young tech leaders like Ethan. Nia closed the email and let her hands go still on the keyboard. She felt the hollowness you get when the shape of your work already belongs to someone else in the room. The next day, an administrative chain reaction began. Mrs. Lennox in college counseling called Nia in just to chat. The office smelled like citrus cleaner and laminator heat. "I'm hearing great things about your project," Lennox said, tone bright. "I also wanted to share some feedback that might help your recommendations. A couple of teachers have noticed you can be, very precise in group settings. That's excellent for code. For collaboration, perhaps soften your approach." "What did they say?" Nia asked. "Nothing negative," Lennox assured quickly. "Just guidance. Words like assertive, protective of your process. There's a suggestion to let Ethan take presentation lead, so the committee sees your team dynamic." "My process is protecting our users," Nia said evenly, "and the code is mine." "I know," Lennox replied, half whisper. "And I want you to win. But optics matter." Optics. The story again. In that moment, Nia realized Ethan hadn't merely replaced files. He had replaced frames around them. He'd positioned himself as the steady hand and her as the complication. The narrative, once set, turned solid like resin. Back in the lab, the rumor had grown legs. "She's brilliant, but territorial," someone said near the printers. "He's a natural leader," someone else said by the window. "It balances." Balance is a euphemism for erasure. Late that afternoon, Ethan finally merged his changes. The sloppy replacements that would later show up in the metadata, as authored by him. He wore that manner of easy helpfulness as he clicked the trackpad. "Just simplifying the folder structure," he said, "getting us ready for prime time." "I have proof of authorship," Nia told him quietly, eyes on the screen. "Then you have nothing to worry about," he replied, all friendliness, a voice so light it floated. "Let's just ship." She closed the laptop and counted to 5, steadying her breath. The room was full of the small sounds of progress. Chairs scraping, keys ticking, murmured jokes about bugs that wouldn't die. Every noise felt far away. She stood and crossed to Higgins' desk. "Can we talk about presentation roles?" she asked, keeping her tone even. "Sure," Higgins said, looking up with the kind smile he saved for students he liked. "What's on your mind?" "I built the system's core," she said. "I'd like to walk the judges through the architecture and run the demo." "Totally fair," Higgins replied, flipping through his clipboard. "Though, and this is just based on the dry run, Ethan's got a strong handle on the narrative. Judges are big on clarity. Maybe he leads, you tag in for technicals." "He doesn't understand the technicals," Nia said, more bluntly than she intended. "We risk breaking the demo." Higgins paused. "I don't doubt your competence, Nia. You're one of the best I've taught. But presentation is part of engineering. You both need to share the stage. Ethan's already told me he's finished everything he needed for the final build." He smiled, like it was settled. "This will reflect well on you both." Her mouth opened, then closed. She could see it happening. The gentle, well-meaning slide into the path of least resistance. The path where the confident voice goes first while the careful mind stays behind, ready to catch the fall. She wanted to shake the desk, to summon the hours, to pour them into the room like light, until everyone blinked and saw. "Understood," she said, though it felt like betrayal of herself. Higgins stood and raised his voice, so the class could hear. "All right, teams. Quick announcement before you go. I've assigned presentation leads for efficiency. on the day. Tech demos are tricky, and we want smooth flow. He glanced down at the clipboard, then out at the room. For the safety app, Ethan will represent the group in front of the judges. Nia, you'll handle the live back-end support. A couple of students nodded like that made perfect sense. One whispered, "Great call." Another looked at Nia with sympathy so thin it grated. And then, like the universe wanted to underline the moment with cruel flourish, a notification popped up on Nia's screen, synced from their shared repo. A hidden folder she hadn't seen before, labeled a legacy backup, had been pushed an hour earlier. She clicked it, heart stuttering, and watched as her original modules appeared, pristine, intact. But when she opened the metadata, the author field held steady, stamped everywhere with the same lie, Ethan Blake. Only this time, under the author line, a new tag pulsed that she hadn't noticed before. A quietly terrifying twist. Signed with school admin token. Her breath hitched. Somehow he'd attached the school's own authentication signature to the files. "Everything good?" Higgins called from the front, cheerful, oblivious. Nia stared at the tag, the institution's seal sitting over her work like a watermark, and felt the floor tilt. If the system believed Ethan wrote her code, who would believe her? The bell rang. Chairs scraped back, and the room dissolved into noise. Higgins tapped the clipboard, ready to dismiss. "Big day Friday," he said brightly. "Leads, be ready to dazzle." Nia looked up, eyes clear as glass. "Mr. Higgins," she said, voice steady but low. "Before Friday I need you to see something." The air in the auditorium was thick with the scent of fresh varnish and nerves. Rows of seniors sat hunched over laptops, whispering last-minute notes to their partners. On stage, the school's projector threw a pale, cold light across the curtain. It was Friday, presentation day, the day that weeks of work would either cement futures or quietly ruin them. Nia sat in the front row, laptop closed, hands resting on her knees. Her code was ready, her mind was ready. But she wasn't the one holding the reins. Ethan stood on stage in a pressed button-down, hair gelled, wireless clicker in hand. His laptop sat center stage, tethered to the projector. He had insisted on controlling the slides and running the program for smoothness. Higgins had agreed. "Judges are here," Higgins whispered from the wings. 3 adults sat at a table off to the side. A local college professor, a city tech startup founder, and the district's IT director. They flipped through score sheets as they sipped coffee from paper cups. When Higgins announced, "Up next, the Campus Safety Alert app by Ethan Blake and Nia Carter." A polite round of applause swept the room. Ethan stepped forward, confidence radiating. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice just loud enough to fill the space without the mic. "Today I'm going to show you a product that could change the way schools respond to emergencies. We call it Safe Now." "We." Nia felt the pronouns scrape. The slides were smooth, clean stock images, bold text, tidy bullet points. He was telling her story in his language. "First," Ethan said, clicking, "let's walk through the concept. Imagine you're a student who sees something dangerous. An intruder, a fight, a fire hazard. With Safe Now, you can report it in under 10 seconds. The system alerts staff instantly, and if it's serious, notifies law enforcement." Heads nodded in the audience. "Now I'll show you how it works." He bent over his laptop, fingers tapping. The screen switched from slides to the program's login page. For a second, Nia's heart lifted. Even with his careless edits, maybe it would hold together. Ethan typed a demo username and hit enter. The loading icon spun. The dashboard appeared. "This is the admin interface," he said, clicking to a sample report. "It shows location, time, and urgency level." The screen froze. A moment later, an error message bled across the projector. "Fatal exception, unhandled promise rejection in auth module." Gasps rippled through the room. One of the judges leaned back in his chair. Ethan froze, eyes darting to the message. Then he smiled like nothing had happened. "Looks like a small glitch. Probably from a section someone else was handling." Nia felt heat crawl up her neck. Someone else. The words landed heavy. The subtext was obvious to everyone watching. She was the back end. So if the back end failed, the blame was hers. Her hands tightened on her knees. She knew that bug. She had fixed it 2 weeks ago, before Ethan's cleanup stripped out her validation checks. His version didn't catch missing authentication tokens. It was his bug. The professor judge leaned forward. "Do you have a working build?" Ethan nodded quickly. "Yes, just let me try something." He clicked furiously, avoiding Nia's gaze. The startup founder whispered something to the IT director. Higgins stood in the wings, arms crossed, mouth tight. Ethan, Nia called from the front row, her voice carrying just enough to be heard. Switch to my build. I have it on my laptop. It'll run clean. Ethan didn't look up. I've got this, he said too brightly. You don't. She shot back, the steel in her voice audible now. That's your edited version. It won't. Carter, Higgins cut in from the side, tone edged with warning. Let him finish. Nia's jaw tightened. Let him finish, like the priority was preserving his presentation flow, not salvaging the actual project. Ethan tried again, launching another feature. This time, the app loaded, but the data fields were blank. See, this is the real-time report list, he began. The IT director judge interrupted, tapping his pen on the table. It's empty. Yes, because, well, the sample data must have been cleared, Ethan said, his voice thinner now. Nia leaned forward in her seat, the urge to grab the laptop almost physical. My build has the sample data and the live reporting functions. I can fix this in under 2 minutes. Ethan chuckled lightly, but his jaw was tight. We'll be fine. The startup founder glanced at the clock. Time's ticking, she said. Ethan pulled up the settings page, clearly stalling. The UI flickered, half-rendered text spilling over buttons. The professor raised his eyebrows. This is a school safety app. If it crashes during a demo, how can it be trusted in a crisis? The weight of the question landed like a stone in the room. Nia knew the answer. It can't, unless you run the real version. But saying it now would be war. Ethan began, but his voice faltered. He looked toward Higgins. Nia took the moment. Mr. Higgins, let me run my version. I'll show them the actual functionality. The teacher hesitated, eyes flicking between her and Ethan. If you can fix it live without breaking the presentation flow, I'll allow it. A few students in the audience exchanged glances, leaning forward. The possibility of watching a live code salvage in front of the judges was more thrilling than anything on the schedule. Nia opened her bag, sliding her laptop onto her knees. She could feel the heat of the spotlight even from her seat, the unspoken gamble Higgins had just thrown down. If she failed in front of the panel, every stereotype Ethan had been quietly feeding about her would calcify in the judges' minds. She placed her hands on the keyboard, eyes narrowing on the screen. I'll fix it, she said quietly, mostly to herself. But before she could move, Ethan did something unexpected. He unplugged his HDMI cable from the projector and stepped closer to Higgins, speaking in a low, urgent tone Nia couldn't catch. Whatever he said made Higgins's eyes flick toward her, then toward the judges. When Higgins turned back, his voice was firm. Carter, hold off. Ethan's already halfway through. If you want to show your version, you'll need to repair his build first. The audience murmured. Nia stared at Higgins, stunned. You're asking me to fix code I didn't break in real time under his name. Higgins didn't flinch. If you want credit, that's the path. The laptop on stage blinked, cursor waiting. Ethan stepped back, a picture of polite invitation. Your move, he said. And for the first time that morning, Nia realized this wasn't just about salvaging the project. It was about proving herself on terms she hadn't agreed to. She rose from her chair, each step toward the stage a slow, deliberate decision. The room had gone silent. The only sound the faint hum of the projector fan. Her hands hovered over Ethan's keyboard. She could feel every eye in the auditorium on her. If she touched one wrong key, if the fix failed, the humiliation would be hers alone. She took a breath, pushed her hair behind her ear, and set her fingers on the keys. And just as she did, the screen flickered again, a new error message, one she had never seen before, flashing across the projector in bright red. Authentication token revoked by admin. Her stomach dropped. Somewhere deep in the code, someone with high-level access had just pulled the rug out from under her. The stage lights felt hotter than they had any right to be. Nia lowered herself into Ethan's seat at the center of the auditorium, her knees brushing the edge of the table. The keyboard was still warm from his hands. She didn't need to look up to know what was on the faces in the audience. She could feel it. That half-curious, half-predicting gaze people get when they think they're about to watch something fail. And for some of them, failure wasn't just a possibility. It was confirmation. Confirmation of the quiet, poisonous stereotype that a black girl in tech was a diversity story, not a competent story. She flexed her fingers over the keys, jaw tight. Okay, she said under her breath. Let's work. The screen stared back at her, frozen on the bright red authentication token revoked by admin message. She knew that line. She knew it because she'd written the original authentication handler, and she knew Ethan had ripped it out during his cleanup. In its place, he'd cobbled together a cheaper method, one that relied on a school admin token stored in Plaintext, the kind of shortcut that made you look fast in the short term, and made your system collapse in front of a panel of judges. Her mind spun. That token wasn't supposed to revoke itself, which meant someone, either through negligence or design, had deliberately invalidated it. And now, in the biggest moment of her high school career, she was being asked to fix it in real time, on a machine that wasn't even hers. Carter, time's moving, Higgins reminded from the wings, his voice a measured pressure. She nodded without looking up. First step, find where Ethan had stored the token. She opened the config file directory, and her heart sank. The paths were all renamed. And not just renamed, but hidden inside nested folders, labeled with generic words like temp and old files. Of course he buried it. She dug faster, the clock in the corner of the screen ticking mercilessly. Every second she spent digging was another second. The judge's skepticism deepened. The startup founder was leaning back in her chair now, arms folded, watching with a kind of detached curiosity. The professor kept glancing between her and Ethan, as if measuring leadership by who was standing still and who was scrambling. Finally, she found it. Temp, cache, admin token.txt. She opened the file. It was empty, not blank emptied. A ripple of murmurs moved through the audience. Nia's pulse kicked harder. No token meant no authentication. No authentication meant no demo. She had two options: generate a new token and risk breaking dependencies, or bypass the check entirely and pray the app didn't throw a cascade of new errors. She chose the first. Bypassing would make it run, but that would be a hollow win. One crash during a judge's click and they'd call it unstable. Her fingers flew, opening the terminal, running a script to generate a new token. The process bar crawled like it had somewhere else to be. She heard Ethan clear his throat behind her. Need a hand? He asked, voice syrupy. I need silence, she said, not breaking her rhythm. A few chuckles from the students rippled through the room, but Nia didn't let them in. She was working in a space narrower than a tightrope, the margin for error so slim she could feel it pressing against her on both sides. The token generated. She copied it into the config file and rebooted the back-end service. The screen flickered black, then returned to the login page. 30 seconds gone. She typed in the demo account. Hit enter. Loading wheel. Then, another error. Uncaught peniprane in alerts module. Her stomach dropped. She recognized the function name instantly. That was one of Ethan's late-night additions, a patch he'd written after she'd finished the main system. She'd warned him that hard-coding certain variables would make the module brittle. He'd shrugged and said, if it works, it works. It worked. Until now. The startup founder leaned forward. Is this fixable in the time left? Nia's fingers didn't stop. Yes. She cracked open the alerts module, scanning for the fault line. There it was. Var urgency level. High. Hard code in the wrong scope. She changed it to pull from the live database. Added a quick try-catch block to keep it from throwing if the data came back late. Her ears were ringing with the silence in the room, the kind that thickens when everyone's waiting for the floor to give way. Somewhere in the audience, a pen clicked twice. She hit save, relaunched the app. The loading wheel spun again, slower this time, like it was weighing whether to cooperate. Her throat felt tight. 15 seconds left. The professor leaned to the other judges. We should probably... The dashboard loaded. Full. Every sample report was there. Timestamps, urgency ratings, locations. Gasps broke from the first few rows. Someone whispered. She did it. But Nia wasn't smiling. Because in the top right corner of the dashboard, a feature she had never seen before was glowing in red. Admin override log. Her gut told her Ethan had added it. And the way it was highlighted, it was meant for eyes other than hers. The startup founder pointed at the screen. What's that tab? Nia hesitated, cursor hovering. She could ignore it, go straight into the demo as planned, or click it and risk opening a door she couldn't close. The clock ticked down. 10 seconds. She clicked. The override log expanded, revealing a list of admin actions tied to usernames and timestamp. At the top, Ethan Blake. Revoked token, 9:14 a.m. The judges' faces shifted. The professor's eyebrows rising, the founder's eyes narrowing, the IT director's lips pressing together. The room was no longer just watching a tech demo. No one breathed. The red line on the screen, Ethan Blake, revoke token, 9:14 a.m. Today was a spike driven into the quiet. Nia felt the tiniest tremor move through the audience, the collective sense that something had slipped out of place. Ethan's smile flickered, then steadied, like a light trying to pretend the power hadn't dipped. The professor judge cleared his throat. Mr. Blake, why would you revoke your own admin token during your presentation? Ethan's mouth shaped a recovery. We have multiple test tokens, he said smoothly. I cycled one to simulate real-world conditions. You know, resilience under pressure. The startup founder's brow creased. Then you'd have had another token ready. We do, Ethan replied, gesturing toward the laptop as if that were proof in itself. We planned a live fix to show adaptability. Nia could feel the old trick working. The confident tone, the vocabulary of leadership thrown over a hole big enough to fall through. She didn't look at him. She returned to the keyboard. If we're demonstrating resilience, she said evenly, we should also demonstrate authorship. Her cursor moved with a calm that her heart refused to share. Judges, I'd like to show you the metadata. Higgins stepped closer to the stage edge. Nia, let's focus on functionality. Their rubric includes technical documentation, the IT director judge said. Eyes intent. Metadata's fair. Nia opened the integrated version control panel, the one Ethan had tried to hide behind renamed folders and vague commit messages. She expanded the log. A column of timestamps unfurled, tidy and relentless. Late nights, early mornings, weekends. She filtered by author, the screen populated with lines in a familiar teal tag. Author Nia Carter. Commits. Author Ethan Blake. Commits. The murmur this time wasn't subtle. It moved like wind, forward through the students and back across faculty seats. Ethan's jaw tightened a millimeter. Nia scrolled into the commit details, opening one at random. The message hovered. Implement AES 25.6 key rotation. Reduce token expiry window to 1 to 15 mils. Update queue back off. She clicked another refactor alerts module to async. Add schema validation to payload. Another fix race condition in notification broker. Add tests 12. The timestamps lined up with the nights Nia had stayed until the janitor turned off the hall lights. She could almost smell that fluorescent dust on the lines themselves. Ethan folded his arms, slanting a smile toward the judges. She's a great teammate, he said. We decided she'd do most of the commits while I managed the architecture and product direction. The professor didn't look away from the screen. Architecture shows up in commits, unless you whiteboard, Ethan countered. I work analog. Then the architecture doc should be in your repo. The IT director said dry. Where is it? Nia clicked the docs folder. The architecture document opened, crisp and annotated. At the top, lead author Nia Carter. Ethan's name appeared once, attached to a single paragraph marked pitch notes. The founder leaned in, elbows on table. Ms. Carter, can you filter for file authorship by line? I can, Nia said, fingers steady. She opened the blame view on the core file, the one that handled real-time event ingestion and routing. Each line lit up with a name. 95% wore the teal tag, Nyack. The few lines not hers were UI strings. And a footer comment. She clicked through other modules. Same pattern. Her name like a watermark. Nia didn't gloat. She let the facts do what they do when they're finally allowed into air.
Behind her, Ethan cleared his throat. She's cherry-picking, he said. The core module was a draft she built off my prototype from the hackathon. This is a merged project. The lines reflect who typed, not who directed.
Direction is usually evidenced somewhere, the professor said mildly. Whiteboard photos, tickets, planning notes. Ethan's cheek twitched. We used voice notes. The founder's smile was thin. Then play one. Nia didn't turn. She had learned to keep her gaze stapled to the work in moments like this. Eye contact could be misread as aggression. She opened the media notes folder she'd created when she started recording to protect herself. Inside, time-stamped screen captures, narrated coding sessions, and 2 short audio clips labeled Pitch E. She clicked one. Ethan's voice poured out of the laptop speakers. Okay, so Nea'll handle like the encryption thing and the Q stuff because she's into that. And I'll, make sure it looks good. Silence. Then a couple of students in the back coughed laughter they couldn't swallow in time. Ethan's posture stiffened. This is being taken out of context. Context then, the IT director said. Open the most recent crash diff. Nia complied. She snapped the diff sidebar wide, so the red and green lines stood like stripes. On the left, her original validation and token handling. On the right, Ethan's simplified version, Playpants token path, no guard clauses, a brittle string comparison, where an enum belonged. She traced the bug with a finger, speaking for the room and into the microphone she didn't have. This is where it failed on stage. The condition returns true on null. It sails through with an empty token, then throws on the downstream call. Why would you approve that change? The professor asked, still watching the screen, not her. I didn't, Nia said quietly. It was merged last night past our agreed window. A rustle from the faculty row. Higgins shifting. He'd heard her say agreed window before, and he'd nodded like a man who loves order. Now the order was on fire in front of him, and he paced the edge of the stage, hands behind his back. Ethan tried a different angle. Voice softer. We're on the same team, he said, looking past Nia toward the judges. We're kids, learning. We experiment. You can't criminalize experimentation. Experimentation doesn't include scrubbing attribution, the founder said evenly. Open the legacy backup that's tagged with the school admin signature. The room startled again. Everyone had heard that phrase in whispers since the dry run. Admin token. Nia pulled up the legacy backup folder. Inside, her pristine modules gleamed like artifacts rescued from a flood. She opened metadata. There it was, stamped in rigid system font. Author Ethan Blake, signed, school admin token. The professor leaned forward. Explain the signature. Nia's throat tightened. You can sign a commit locally with a token so the system accepts it as verified. We use a school-wide service token for deploying to the lab machines. It should never be used to rewrite authorship. The IT director's pen stopped moving. How did a student access a deployment token? Ethan raised his palms. It's in the shared drive for advanced CS. Everyone knows that. I followed the instructions Higgins posted. Higgins flinched. The token is in a protected folder for teacher use. His gaze flicked to Nia, then back to the judges. Students aren't supposed to see it. Nia kept her voice level. He saw it. She clicked open the file history for the token's config. The access timestamps populated with user IDs. One ID repeated in the hours after midnight. E. Blake. It sat like a fingerprint in wet cement. A low whistle from somewhere in the audience. The founder's face was unreadable now, neither impressed nor angry. Just alert, like a person watching a door swing open on a windy day. Ethan shifted tactics again, reaching for righteous offense. This is becoming a witch hunt. She has obviously prepared a whole courtroom show to discredit me. Nia swallowed. She knew the moment looming, how an accusation of malice could turn the room even when truth was loud. She clicked one last tab. Tests. The suite listed 12 green checks. She opened the first test file. Each carried her name in the header because she had written them for herself to sleep at night. The professor skimmed, then nodded almost imperceptibly. The founder looked to Higgins. Mr. Higgins, you've watched them work for months. What's your read? Higgins spoke as if each word had to pass a checkpoint inside him. Nia is meticulous. Ethan is persuasive. He hesitated. I've seen more code from her. I've heard more presentation from him. So you split the difference, the IT director said. Higgins didn't answer. The room felt tilted. For the first time since they had stepped on stage, the center of gravity had moved toward Nia. Her chest loosened, just enough to let air in. She kept her voice quiet. We can run the demo now. On the fixed build, you'll see what it's supposed to be. Do, the founder said. Nia hit run. The app launched clean login, loaded dashboard, sample alerts. She touched the report button. An anonymized form appeared, with fields exactly as she'd designed them. She tapped submit test alert. A soft tone chimed. On the admin panel, the alert slid into view, colored amber, its metadata precise. This is safe now, she said, not bothering to look at Ethan. This is what was built. Applause wasn't appropriate in the middle of judging, but something like it brushed through the audience anyway. Shoulders releasing, a few nods, even a smatter of fingers drumming softly on armrests. Ethan's confident veneer thinned another layer, and through it, the outline of panic showed. The professor leaned toward his colleagues. The technical authorship seems clear. The IT director nodded. And the override log is concerning. Higgins hovered, the conflict painting his face in two colors. He glanced at the judges, then the students, then finally at Nia. We'll address the process violations after we conclude the round, he said. For now, Ethan stepped forward, voice cutting cleanly through. No. He lifted a hand, palm out, and turned toward the judges with a steadiness that looked like conviction until you listened to the words. Ms. Carter is extremely talented, he began, pitching warmth, but she has had full access to my laptop for weeks. She knows how to spoof metadata. She could easily have proved authorship using scripts. She's good enough to make it look real. A tight, startled hush took the room. The line landed with cruel elegance, admiration as alibi, compliment as blade. The founder's eyes sharpened. You're alleging she hacked the files to frame you? Ethan didn't blink. Yes, he said, calm and unwavering, like someone telling a truth that had come to them nobly. She hacked our project, and the logs to steal credit. The word hacked slid across the floor and coiled at Nia's feet, a poisonous thing disguised as vocabulary. Around the room she felt people pull back a fraction, not from her but from the risk of being too close when a label like that starts to stick. She knew exactly how fast that word traveled in schools, in scholarship committees, in inboxes that decide futures. Nia kept her eyes on the laptop. Her hands didn't tremble. She could feel the shape of the answer forming, technical and simple, the kind of answer even a layperson could hold. But before she could speak, the auditorium doors clicked open in the back. A woman in a navy blazer stepped in, moving with the quiet authority of someone who didn't have to announce herself. A few teachers straightened instinctively. She walked down the aisle without breaking stride and stopped beside the judge's table. The IT director looked up. Principal Markham? The principal nodded once, her gaze sweeping from Ethan to Nia, to the live screen filled with logs. I've been watching from the feed, she said calmly. If there's a hacking allegation, we'll need to verify against the school server logs. She turned to Higgins. Fetch them. Nia felt her breath catch, not with fear but with the precise bracing cold of a different kind of test. Because she knew what those logs would show. And she also knew who had the authority to make them disappear. The accusation hung in the air like a foghorn, low and unavoidable. She hacked the files. Nia felt the word trying to wrap around her like a net, designed to entangle and humiliate. She refused to let it. She kept her voice even. May I explain in plain language how authorship shows up in code? She didn't look at Ethan. She addressed the room, the judges, the principal, the students who had leaned forward, expecting flames, and now found themselves staring at a blueprint. Principal Markham gave a small nod. Go ahead. Nia tapped the screen. Version control is like the black box on an airplane. Every change gets recorded with a timestamp and a name. You can't just say I made the plane fly when the recorder shows who pressed the buttons, and if you try to rewrite the black box after the flight, there's a mismatch in the systems that recorded the original. She clicked open the graph view. A clean branching diagram. These are our branches. Each dot is a change. Most dots are mine. If you look here, she zoomed, you can see Ethan merged a set of changes last night. The system shows who initiated the merge, and which lines changed. That's separate from the name typed into the header of the file. So even if you put lead developer at the top, the black box still knows who actually wrote the lines. The IT director nodded, expression intent, and the per line blame. Nia split the screen. Code on the left, attribution on the right. It read like a ledger. This panel shows who last touched each line. 95%, says Niask, with dates that stretch back over months. A forged signature can't rewrite this pattern without rewriting the entire history, which creates gaps, missing footprints, inconsistent timestamps, a trail you can't hide unless you have full server access and time. Ethan stepped closer, calm on the surface, panic simmering beneath. She could have scripted that. She's talented. Nia didn't flinch. If I had faked it, you would see irregularities. Commits that happen faster than a human can type, time zones jumping, author email mismatches. This system checks those, also. She paused, then made a choice. I signed my major commits. A ripple of surprise moved through the seats. Higgins blinked. You what? Cryptographic signatures, Nia said, keeping it simple. Like a wax seal that only I can stamp. Weeks ago, I generated a key on my laptop and attached it to my name. Each time I pushed the big changes, I stamped them. If anyone tampers, the seals break. She opened a terminal and verified a commit. The screen printed, good signature from Nia Carter. Then another, good signature. She pivoted the laptop slightly so the judges could see. These are generated on my machine, with my private key. No one else has it. The startup founder's lips curved, not into a smile but into respect. Where's your public key published? On a personal page and on a student dev forum, Nia said. I posted it the day I started the core module. There's a forum timestamp. The professor murmured, external corroboration, to the other judges, as if ticking a box. Around the auditorium, the feeling shifted. Subtle, but unmistakable. Charm was losing to evidence. Ethan chose offense. She planned this. She always acts like everyone's out to steal her thunder. She recorded herself, she signed everything. Because I've had to, Nia said, and this time she let a seam of emotion open. Not rage. History. When you're the person the rumor cuts first, you learn to keep receipts. I didn't plan for you to revoke a token on stage. I planned for myself to be believed. The room quieted again, different now. Less spectacle, more reckoning. Someone in the middle row whispered, damn, not as mockery, but as recognition. Higgins cleared his throat, unsure. A man torn between what he'd assumed and what he now saw. Miss Carter, could you also explain the screen recordings? Briefly. She nodded. They're not just videos. I saved a hash. Think of it as a fingerprint for each recording. I emailed those hashes to myself the night I made them. The email timestamps come from the school's server. If I had edited the videos later to fake something, the fingerprints wouldn't match the emails. The IT director looked toward Principal Markham, interested. If she can produce one, we can test that. Nia pulled up a recording from 3 weeks ago. Her cursor moving, her soft narration, implementing key rotation, adding tests verification passed. She copied the file's hash into a quick checker. Then she opened the school email app and searched subject nightly hash, safe now. Dozens of time-stamped messages lined the screen, each with a cryptic-looking string. She found the matching date and pasted the email's hash beneath the new one. 2 strings, identical. The projector brightened their sameness. No edit, no fudge, just a quiet, stubborn line of truth. The founder exhaled a slow breath. Okay. For a heartbeat, it seemed finished. The story corrected. The gravity settled. Then Nia pushed further, careful and precise. And one more thing, she said. The admin token signature on the legacy backup commits. It proves the opposite of what Ethan is saying. Ethan's head jerked. Excuse me? The admin token is only used when deploying to school lab machines, she explained, tone like a teacher whose patience hadn't run out. It's stored in a restricted folder. A student wouldn't need it to write code. They'd only need it if they wanted to make the system trust a change from someone it normally shouldn't. Like rewriting author fields and making it look official. The signature doesn't prove authorship. It proves someone with access to restricted credentials tried to push a story through. The professor tilted his head. And given that the token access log shows the user ID E. Blake around midnight, Nia didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Ethan's confidence fissured. Everyone knows my laptop's open in the lab, he said quickly. Anyone could. Your ID requires your password, the IT director said. And the access came from your home IP. A small, sharp intake of breath from the audience. Nia didn't look back to see who made it. She kept her attention forward. She had learned not to search for allies in moments like this. You keep your eyes on the work and let it speak. Principal Markham's voice was crisp. Mr. Higgins, bring me the server access logs. Now. An unexpected shiver of fear ran through Nia, not for the truth itself, but for the corridors it had to walk through to be recognized. She'd already seen how narratives traveled faster than facts. Logs could be lost. Signatures could be misread. Adults could decide not to see. She steadied herself. There's more corroboration, she said softly, because she wanted the judges to understand. She hadn't made a fortress out of paranoia. She had built a trail. 2 weeks ago, I emailed you, Mr. Higgins. The architecture PDF for feedback. The file has a checksum in the footer. She opened the PDF from her sent mail, projected it, and zoomed in a string labeled share. She generated the checksum live from the copy in the repository's docs folder, and put the two side by side. Identical again. Same file. Same day. Higgins swallowed. I remember the email. He looked smaller for a moment. Less the man with a clipboard, more a person realizing his scale had been off. Ethan's face hardened. You're letting her drown me in technobabble, he said to the judges. It's smoke. She's manipulating the optics. Because she knows committees love a tech savant narrative. The founder's eyebrows lifted. Optics are precisely why you were trusted up front, Mr. Blake. They're also why we double-check. A few seniors in the back row shifted uncomfortably. The word optics had a way of making people look at their own hands. Then the twist arrived, not from Nia or Ethan, but from the side door, where a woman in a tailored suit slipped in with the brisk confidence of someone who didn't wait for introductions. She moved straight to Principal Markham and laid a hand on her arm. Not a question, an interruption. Lydia Blake, Higgins whispered under his breath, as if saying a weather alert. Ethan's mother, the board's fundraising chair. Her presence turned the room colder by 3 degrees. Principal, Mrs. Blake said, low enough to be polite, loud enough to be heard. I'm concerned about due process. We're turning a student project into a courtroom. Perhaps we should move this conversation to your office. She smiled at the judges. We can provide any logs you need. The founder didn't return the smile. We'll need them now, and we'll need them unfiltered. Mrs. Blake's eyes slid toward Nia for the briefest second. Assessing cool, a glance that said I see you, and the trouble you are causing my plan. Then she turned back to the principal. This is derailing our schedule. It's clarifying it, Principal Markham said, voice steady. We'll finish the round. Ethan tried one last pivot. His tone softened to an impossible tenderness. It never meant to steal, he said, gaze sweeping the room, landing on no one, on everyone. I was trying to lead. Nia is brilliant. We're both trying to do something good. If the story gets messy, the app will never be adopted. Isn't the goal safety? It was an almost beautiful appeal, the kind that wins rooms, not a denial, but a reframing, a moral sleight of hand asking the audience to choose harmony over fairness. Heads tilted. People love a neat ending. People love a both end. Nia inhaled and answered the way code answers, without ornament. Safety doesn't exist when truth is optional, she said. If the system lies about who did the work, it will lie about what it's doing when it matters. Silence. And then the professor spoke gently, but with the finality of a hinge closing. I'd like to verify the project history against the official school server logs, pulled by district IT, right protected and observed. No copies through a teacher account, no handoffs. We need a clean chain of custody. The words landed like a gavel. Higgins glanced at Principal Markham, unsure. Mrs. Blake's jaw tightened. Ethan's fingers flexed against his sides. And Nia, watching the inevitability of process begin to move, felt a tremor of hope, and a new kind of fear. Because if those logs came out clean, someone important was going to be very publicly wrong, and someone else, quietly powerful, might decide the logs shouldn't come out at all. Principal Markham didn't move at first. She stood there in the aisle, hands clasped in front of her stillness drawing the room into a tight focus. Then she said evenly, Mr. Higgins, step into the IT office and bring back the current semester's repository logs for both students. Pull them directly from the school server, read-only mode. Higgins hesitated, glancing at Ethan, then Nia, like someone silently calculating which decision would create the fewest waves. Yes, ma'am, he said finally, and left through the side door. The auditorium had the kind of hush that wasn't really quiet. The faint shifting of chairs, the whisper of jackets, the sound of people adjusting their expectations without meaning to. Ethan's smile had frozen into something tight, his teeth still showing but his eyes scanning the judges for any sign of sympathy. He didn't find it. Minutes later, Higgins returned, holding a printout thicker than a short novel. Its pages curled slightly from the warmth of the copier. I have them, he said, his voice flat. Read the totals, Markham instructed. Higgins cleared his throat and began. Cumulative commit counts since project start. Author Nia Carter. 62 commits. Author Ethan Blake. 9 commits. The words landed like dropped metal. A ripple moved through the class, not loud but deep. A couple of students shifted in their seats, suddenly busy with their sleeves or notes. Ethan's friends in the back row, the ones who'd been smirking earlier, now stared at their shoes. Higgins continued. Average session length. Carter 2 hours, 16 minutes. Blake 14 minutes. The IT director judge raised his eyebrows slightly, the way a mechanic might upon seeing an engine with the wrong parts. That's a disparity. Ethan leaned forward, his voice attempting a chuckle but landing somewhere strained. Length doesn't equal impact. I focus on high-level features. The startup founder didn't look up from the printout she'd been handed. Your longest recorded session was 32 minutes, and it involved editing slide graphics. A low murmur swept the room again. Even in the faculty section, a few eyes slid toward Ethan with the polite caution people use when reassessing someone they thought they knew. Markham's voice was calm, but with an edge now. Please read the access logs for the admin token. Higgins turned pages. Admin token accessed 4 times this semester, 3 by staff for deployment, 1 by user ID. Blake on March 14, 12:43 a.m. Remote IP matching a residential address. The founder leaned back in her chair. That lines up with the timestamp on the overwritten authorship fields in the legacy backup. For a moment, no one spoke. The truth wasn't crashing in. It was seeping, slow and irreversible, into every corner of the room. Ethan tried again. I was troubleshooting. Troubleshooting what? The professor interrupted, looking directly at him. Authorship. Ethan's jaw moved, but no words came out. And that was the moment Nia saw it. A subtle shift in his expression, the first visible crack in the mask he'd been wearing all morning. The easy confidence had slipped. What remained was calculation. He was scanning the room for lifelines, the way a person might look for a door in a building filling with smoke. The professor's voice cut through. Miss Carter, based on the logs, your commits account for roughly 95% of the development time and functional features. Would you say that's accurate? Nia's throat felt tight, but she kept her voice steady. Yes. Every feature you see in the working build came from my code, except for some interface elements. The founder didn't look at Ethan when she said, the logs confirm it. Around them the shift was tangible. Ethan's friends, the ones who had laughed at the diversity admissions line weeks ago, couldn't meet her eyes now. The boys in robotics who had called Ethan the natural leader leaned toward each other, but didn't whisper. They just stared forward, pretending interest in the floor. The mask of privilege was slipping in real time, and it was messier than anyone expected. Higgins looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't decide which side of the line to stand on. In a smaller voice than before, he asked, do the logs show any planning work from Ethan? Meetings? No. The IT director shook his head. Not on the school network. Not in this repository. If it exists, it's off-platform. The founder glanced at the professor. In other words, invisible. Ethan shifted. The pageantry gone now. You're all acting like I sat around doing nothing. The IT director cut in, his tone precise. The logs are evidence, not impressions. Ethan's shoulders tightened. He opened his mouth again, but before he could say anything, the back doors of the auditorium swung open with a sharp metallic sound. A woman strode in, heels clicking like punctuation. She wore a dark navy skirt suit, her blonde hair in a perfect twist. The moment her face caught the light, half the faculty straightened in their chairs. Mrs. Blake, Higgins said softly, as if the name itself was an announcement. Ethan's mother didn't look at him right away. Her gaze swept the room, landing on the judge's table, then on Principal Markham. The set of her mouth was tight, deliberate. I'd like a word, she said to Markham, not bothering with pleasantries. Privately, Markham didn't move. We're in the middle of a judged presentation, Mrs. Blake. This is a matter of school governance, Mrs. Blake said, her tone just shy of sharp. And legal exposure. She glanced toward the judges, her expression the kind that's meant to plant doubt without stating anything outright. The founder looked back at her without blinking. We were about to conclude with our scoring. Mrs. Blake's eyes flicked briefly toward Nia, not long enough to be called a glare, but long enough for Nia to feel the weight of being assessed, weighed, and filed into a category. Then she returned her attention to the principal. I insist we speak now. Markham's jaw tightened. This will take 2 minutes to wrap. Mrs. Blake stepped closer to the front, heels clicking against the hardwood. I won't have this spectacle continue in front of the student body. My son is entitled to due process, and we'll be discussing that in your office. The last words weren't a request. They were an expectation. And from the way Ethan straightened in his chair, it was clear he knew that when his mother stepped into a room, rules tended to bend. The judges looked at one another, silent, but exchanging the kind of glance that said they'd seen this before. The parent who comes in not to clarify the truth, but to contain it. Principal Markham exhaled slowly, then said, We'll take a brief recess. She didn't invite Mrs. Blake to lead the way, but she also didn't refuse. As they moved toward the side door, Nia sat perfectly still, her hands resting on her laptop. The truth was on paper now, black and white in server logs, but she knew the conversation about to happen behind that closed office door could decide whether the truth stayed in daylight or got buried in the dark. And from the look Mrs. Blake had given her, Nia knew she was the one they wanted out of the story. Principal Markham's office was glass on 3 sides and wood on the 4th. The kind of room built to feel transparent until the door clicked shut. When it did, the audience of students and judges dissolved into a pane of reflection. Only 4 faces remained in the present. Markham behind her desk, Mr. Higgins perched in a side chair, Ethan by the window, and his mother Lydia Blake, already claiming the air. She didn't sit. "This has gone far enough," Lydia said. Voice cool, perfectly modulated. "My son wouldn't need to cheat. The suggestion is defamatory." Markham kept her hands folded. "We're not labeling anything yet. We're verifying. What you're doing is humiliating a student in front of his peers," Lydia countered, "and inflaming an already delicate climate by indulging accusations that stem from." Her glance sliced toward the glass, where the blurred silhouette of Nia, waiting outside, hovered like a shadow. Resentment. Higgins shifted. "Mrs. Blake." "No," she said softly, with a smile that wasn't a smile. "Let's call this what it is. Ethan has been a standout since kindergarten. He's the kind of child who mentors others, who organizes groups, and now he's being targeted because he's white, in a moment when certain narratives get rewarded." Markham's jaw set. "We will not frame this as racial grievance." "But that's precisely what it is." Lydia's tone never rose. It sharpened. "I heard a student say privilege in the hall. That word has become a cudgel. Ethan is being punished for the way he carries himself, while a girl who has recorded and hashed every keystroke, how theatrical, is being elevated because it plays to a storyline everyone is eager to applaud." Higgins inhaled, then let it out. "The server logs are not a storyline. Logs can be misread," Lydia said, turning her attention to him as if he were a young intern. "And code can be arranged to look impressive. You're a teacher, Mr. Higgins, not an engineer. You might be out of your depth." "I'm out of patience," Markham replied, the slightest edge entering her voice. "Mrs. Blake, the logs show your son accessing a restricted admin token from home. That is a policy violation. He was troubleshooting after hours. Your own IT practices are partly to blame if credentials were reachable. And as for policy," she reached into her bag and placed a folder on the desk. Inside, glossy mock-ups of a renovation proposal gleamed. Floor plans, renderings, a plaque that read Blake Family Innovation Center. "We have a signed pledge for a 7-figure gift to modernize your lab. It is contingent, as you know, on selecting a student leadership cohort next year, built around the capstone winners. Torpedoing my son's standing over an internal squabble jeopardizes that cohort." Higgins swallowed. Markham didn't blink. "Are you tying a donation to the outcome of a disciplinary review?" "I'm reminding you of the ecosystem you lead," Lydia said. "This school thrives because people like us believe in it. We don't withdraw support lightly, but we won't fund a place that indulges witch hunts." Ethan stared out at the courtyard like he could fall through the glass and land somewhere cleaner. "Mom," he said soft. "Stop." He turned to Markham, eyes thick with practiced sincerity. "I didn't try to hurt anyone. I led. If that came off as big-headed, I'm sorry, but I didn't steal." Markham folded the donation renderings closed. "Leadership is not incompatible with honesty." She tapped the folder once, then set it aside. "Let's deal with facts. The judges asked for district IT to pull server logs. They corroborate what we saw in the auditorium. There will be a formal process." "Then include the whole truth," Lydia said. She pulled out another sheet and slid it across the desk. "An incident report filed 2 weeks ago. Miss Carter accessed class equipment after hours without a staff member present." Higgins frowned. That wasn't an incident. She had my permission. I told the custodian to unlock the lab." "Your email says probably fine if she pops in for 10 minutes. Lydia read, pleased by the find. "Liability is not probably fine after dark. This is a pattern of rule bending that just happens to benefit one student while casting suspicion on another." Higgins flushed. "I wrote that poorly. She had permission. And she's, what did you say in your memo? Intense, protective of her process. That's a diplomatic way of saying she doesn't collaborate." Lydia turned to Markham. "We all know Nia is talented. We also know she can be difficult. It's not racist to say that. It's responsible. Markham's gaze didn't waver. What is racist is assuming her documentation is manipulation, and your son's charisma is leadership. We're past euphemisms. Lydia's smile thinned. I'm a lawyer. We're not past anything until we are. The phone on Markham's desk buzzed. She tapped speaker. Yes? The secretary's voice came through. District Council is on line 2, and the university liaison for Miss Carter's scholarship called twice. They're asking whether there's an academic integrity review underway. Higgins closed his eyes for half a second. Ethan's shoulders tightened. Lydia let the smallest sigh of satisfaction escape before recapturing neutrality. Put the district council through, Markham said. A click, then a voice. Neutral clipped. This is Patel, district legal. I've been briefed by IT. You'll need chain of custody preservation on the logs and devices. No staff member should move files. Both students' grades should be placed on hold, pending a hearing. Understood, Markham said, and Patel continued. If an integrity review is underway for Miss Carter, you'll need to notify any third parties relying on your evaluation, including scholarship committees, that the review exists. We can't have a claim that we withheld material information. Lydia leaned back, barely hiding the glint in her eyes. Higgins' hands nodded in his lap. Markham's voice stayed even. Noted. Hearing timeline. Any time within 5 school days. Patel said, you'll convene a panel with a faculty chair, a district IT rep, and an external educator. Both students can bring an advocate. Evidence submitted 24 hours prior. Thank you, Markham said. We'll follow protocol. The line clicked off. Silence returned, not the earlier hush of expectation, but the sterile quiet of procedure. Ethan spoke first, voice soft. Miss Carter is going to make this ugly online. She already had hashtags going before. People misunderstand. They pick sides. Lydia nodded, almost imperceptibly, as if reinforcing the fear would do its work. Exactly why this needs discretion. Markham rubbed her temples once, then let her hands fall. Discretion is not the same as burying. A hearing is the opposite of rumor. And yet, Lydia said, the damage to my son's reputation is already done. He's getting threats in his DMs. He's a child, a good one. Are you prepared to take responsibility for that, Principal? Are you prepared to take responsibility for trying to use donations to influence a process? Markham countered. Lydia smiled. Influence. I mentioned context. You're the one saying the quiet part out loud. Higgins finally spoke, voice thinner than in class. Ethan, be honest with me. Did you access the admin token from home? Ethan's eyes flicked to his mother, then back. I was troubleshooting. That's not an answer. I didn't think it mattered, Ethan said, barely above a whisper. It was 2 clicks in a folder everyone's used before. Not everyone, Markham said. You. Lydia stepped between them, her body a small wall. Enough. Principal Markham, schedule your hearing. We'll bring counsel. We'll bring our own expert to review the code. And until then, I expect you to prevent further public spectacle. She gathered the folder with the Innovation Center renderings, slid it back into her bag with a practiced motion, then added a sealed envelope on the desk. A letter of intent. It names this spring's capstone leadership fellows. It was drafted last month. Ethan is the first name. Markham didn't touch the envelope. That list is lifted by performance, not prophecy. Lydia's eyes cooled. Sometimes leaders are recognized before the crowd catches up. There it was, the ugly escalation that had been simmering since the auditorium. Subtleties burned off. Accusation laid bare. Nia wasn't just a peer now. She was being framed as a threat to a boy entitled to be believed. A wrench in a machine that had already engraved his name on a plaque. Markham stood. Here's what will happen, she said, voice no longer soft. We will convene a disciplinary hearing Monday at 8 a.m. The panel will include our district IT representative and a faculty chair from another campus. Both students will have equal time. In the meantime, grades for the capstone are frozen. All related recommendations are to be flagged as pending review. Higgins's head snapped up. Her scholarship. He stopped as if the word itself might fracture. Will be notified there's an ongoing review, Markham finished. As district council required. Lydia's relief was a small exhale. She didn't bother to hide. Ethan looked at the floor. For the first time, something that genuinely resembled shame crossed his face. Not for what he'd done, but for the spectacle failing to bend around him. Principal, he said. A last flicker of strategy kicking at the edges. What if you told the truth? Higgins asked, unexpectedly sharp. He looked almost sick. What if you said I took shortcuts because I assumed the room would carry me? Lydia's eyes flashed. We're done. She opened the door. The hallway view rushed in, students milling, the judges conferring, and Nia standing straight-backed by the secretary's desk, not leaning, not slumped, simply waiting, as if steadiness could be armor. Markham stepped out first. Her voice carried just enough to quiet the nearest cluster of whisperers. We're reconvening in 5 minutes to conclude this round. A formal hearing is scheduled for Monday. Nia's phone buzzed at that exact second. She glanced down. An email subject line blinked up like an alarm. Subject: scholarship status. Immediate clarification required. Her stomach tightened. She opened it. The first sentence burned. Due to a reported academic integrity review at your school, your scholarship award is temporarily placed on hold pending confirmation of outcome. She looked up. The hallway's fluorescent lights buzzing like warning sirens. The truth was finally in the open, and so was the power arrayed against it. Principal Markham's eyes met hers. We'll do this by the book, she said. Nia nodded once, the motion small and iron. By the book was how you survived when the story wanted to swallow you. Behind her, a door clicked shut. Lydia Blake and her son moving down the hall toward the parking lot, whispering fast, already planning the next scene. And Monday's hearing, suddenly, wasn't just about grades. It was a verdict, with a price tag on her future. The hallway emptied one bell at a time, but the internet did not wait for bells. While Principal Markham stood in the doorway announcing a Monday hearing, a junior with a cracked phone screen sat on the back row of the auditorium, thumb hovering over post, in the frame. The freeze of the red error message, the muffled gasp and the single moment when Nia's fix brought the dashboard back to life. Followed by the stark, undeniable line, Ethan Blake, revoked token, 9:14 a.m. Today. No captions, just the clip. It hit the school's group chat first, then bled onto a local student forum, where anonymity greased everything. By last period, the clip was on a public account with 12,000 followers that specialized in campus drama. The handle slapped a title across it like a tabloid headline. Capstone meltdown. Who broke safe now? Students tagged each other with rapid-fire glee. Some tagged Nia, some tagged Ethan. By the time dismissal crowded the curb with buses and honking cars, the video had left the county. At home, Nia's mother, Alicia, stirred a pot of stew with the TV on low, pretending to watch, while listening to the bubble of her own breath. Nia sat at the kitchen table, laptop open to the scholarship email that read like a locked gate. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She ignored it as long as she could, then opened the flood. The first message was from her cousin. You're on my FYP, cuz. Then a friend from robotics. Just reported a racist comment under your clip. Don't look. Then a stranger. You're brilliant. I cried watching you keep your cool. Another. You should learn to work on a team. That's what tech is, sweetheart. The last word lodged in her throat. Her father Darnell came in from his shift, shoulders thick with warehouse dust and patience. He took one look at her face and set his keys down gently. Say the word and I'll throw that phone in the sink, he said, a tired smile trying to break the tension. She exhaled through her nose, a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. It'll float. Not with my aim, he muttered, then grew serious. We good? We're viral, she said, the words tasting like a dare and a warning at once. She turned the screen toward him. The clip had 80,000 views and counting. The comments scrolled faster than her eyes could catch. Alicia set the ladle down and leaned over the table. Put the internet down and pick up a spoon. Eat while it's hot. On the TV, the local news teased a segment, Student Presentation Sparks Integrity Review, at Jefferson High. Nia watched the anchor's practiced frown as if it were a mirror. The story had already been reduced to a neat lower third. She ate because her mother needed her to. Between bites, her phone throbbed with a rhythm that increasingly felt like someone else's pulse. A notification from an app she barely used lit the top of her screen. IATLC of Tech followed you. The handle belonged to a nonprofit that hosted hackathons and summer fellowships. A second later, a DM arrived. Saw your demo. We stand with builders. If you need mentorship or legal guidance, email us. That line opened a crack in the pressure, just wide enough for a breath. Her laptop pinged next. A CompSci professor from a local university had quote-tweeted the clip with a thread. A quick explainer, why per-line attribution and signed commits matter. Short version, the person who wrote the code can prove it. The thread was clear and calm, an adult voice in a room full of teenagers shouting. People began tagging it under the video. The word authorship started trending in the replies like a new axis of argument. Then the other axis cleared its throat. Under the same clip, a comment floated to the top. Classic diversity hire faking documentation to steal credit. The account had an eagle in its avatar and a timeline full of slogans. Others piled on, some with dog whistles, subtle enough to pass a casual glance. Others as loud as a siren. Alicia reached for the phone as if it might bite. Block. Report. Don't read this garbage. I'm not, Nia said, which was true and also not true. Darnell ran a hand over his hair, staring at the TV's reflection in the window. They don't see the hours, he said quietly. They never see the hours. You'd think code would be the one place truth sticks, Nia said. He looked at her, eyes gentle. Truth sticks. People slide. Her friend Ava called. Nia put it on speaker. Are you okay? Ava didn't wait for hello. Because my brother's group chat is split like a football game. And some of these kids are saying you made Ethan look bad on purpose. Like you should have let him fail quietly. Fail quietly, Nia repeated, the syllables dry in her mouth. That's a lyric. Don't read the comments, Ava said. Also, do read this, she texted a link. Nia clicked. A thread had started on a national forum known for eating reputations alive. The original post. Girl at my school set up a guy during a presentation. Proof inside. The proof was the clip cut to erase the override log and freeze on the moment the error flashed. The narrative had been flipped with 2 edits. People are remixing, Ava said. Like it's a song. Let them remix, Alicia said from the stove. We have receipts. The receipts multiplied as the evening wore on. A tech YouTuber with 1 million subscribers posted a 3-minute breakdown of the video, pausing on the log, explaining tokens and blame view with clean graphics. If this log is real, the boy nuked his own demo, he said, pausing for emphasis. If the signatures check, the girl wrote the app. Period. He didn't use names. He didn't need to. The comments under his video were less vicious, more nerdy. Someone linked a cryptography primer. Someone else made a meme about admin tokens and chaos grenades. It would have been funny on a different day. Nia's messages filled with a second wave. Black girls in STEM from other schools, sending voice notes and shaky videos from dorm rooms and bedrooms. And buses. I saw you hold it together. I've been in that room. Me too. A girl from Detroit wrote, I screen record everything because teachers believe I'm intense too. Another anonymous. They told me to smile more in my engineering interview. I smiled and didn't get it. Each message felt like a hand on Nia's shoulder and a weight on her chest, simultaneously. Then came the alumni. A Jefferson grad posted a long note on Facebook about being the only black coder in AP Comp Sci 5 years ago. About losing credit to a team lead who took her slides and her lines. 2 former teachers now elsewhere commented, We see you, Nia. The thread traveled back to faculty group chats with a speed the public couldn't see. Higgins read it alone in his living room, the light of his phone turning his face the color of doubt. By midnight, 2 hashtags had climbed into local trends. Uncodegate and Justice Fornia. The first was a carnival. The second a vigil. Under Codegate, people argued like it was sports. Under Justice Fornia, the tone was softer, more precise. Screenshots of commit logs, threads about credit, notes from women who had learned to anticipate being erased and built small fences against it. A black software engineer in Seattle wrote, Version control is our diary. Don't let anyone rip out the pages. Her tweet hit 50,000 likes in an hour. Nia's phone strained under the weight of strangers. Alicia took it from her at 1 a.m. and plugged it in the living room. Sleep, she said. The fight will still be there in the morning. It was. It had grown teeth overnight. When Nia woke at 6:30, the hashtags had gone national. A morning show ran a 30-second segment with stock footage of hands typing. They framed it as a he said, she said, about a school project and the power of social media to escalate local disputes. Nia watched a smiling anchor hold the topic like it was a light prop. Her scholarship liaison had emailed again. The subject line had softened. We're monitoring the situation closely. Please trust the process. The body of the email felt like someone sliding a bowl of ice across the table. We value your talent. The hold is procedural. We expect resolution at your hearing. The only thing Nia could hear was the word hold. The unexpected twist surfaced just before homeroom. A new account appeared on the student forum. created that morning, with a post titled Full Clip. Do not let them edit this. It was longer than the one circulating. Shot from another angle. A better phone. Quieter hand. It captured Nia fixing the build and the crowd's breath at the override log. And then faintly, in the seconds after the demo, a hot mic in the wings. Higgins' voice, amplified just enough by the stage monitor to be audible, said, "We'll address the process violations after we conclude the round." Another voice, a whisper that still carried, "Mrs. Blake is here. We need to move this." It wasn't damning in a legal sense, but it shifted the aroma of the story. People heard the machine behind the room. The post came from a throwaway handle, with no name. Nia's stomach tightened when she realized the perspective. Back row, left aisle, where Mason from robotics usually sat, where Ethan's friend group had staked out their territory for years. Someone from that circle had recorded the clean fee. Someone had decided to share it full. Iva texted, "I think it was Jamie. He left their group chat last night. He sent me a 'you didn't hear it from me' message and a link." Nia closed her eyes for a second. Not relief, not trust, just the acknowledgement that stories rarely break in straight lines. They crack along friendships and regrets. By late morning, Nia's inbox included 2 offers to appear on podcasts she'd never heard of. A DM from a tech reporter who wrote with unusual care, and a message from an account that simply said, "We know what your dad earns," followed by a number that made her hands go ice cold. She locked down her profiles and texted her parents, "Don't answer numbers you don't know." Darnell replied with a thumbs up. And then a minute later, "You taught me that." At lunch, the cafeteria was theater. Eyes skimmed past Nia like she was both there and not. An object that made people's gazes skid. She took a tray and found a table in the corner. Ethan and his orbit stayed on the other side of the room. He looked smaller than he had on stage, but the phone in his hand burned like a flare. Mrs. Blake's message had become a strategy. Control the narrative. A notification jumped on Nia's phone at 12:18 p.m. "I'd Ethan Blake, official posted a video." The handle was new. The bio read, "Student, builder, trying to do good." His follower count ticked up as she watched. Ava slid into the chair across from her, breathless. "He's going to do it." He did. The video opened on Ethan in his room, the background curated with care. A skateboard, a potted plant, a framed photo of a baseball team. No suit, no tie, a hoodie in soft gray, the uniform of contrition. He looked into the camera with eyes he'd been taught to use. "Hey," he began, voice quiet. "I wasn't going to say anything, because I didn't want to make this worse. But lies are spreading, and the truth matters." He swallowed, a tiny tremor practiced to look unpracticed. "I'm proud of our school. I'm proud of our project. I let it. I made mistakes under pressure. But the person you're elevating has been targeting me for weeks. I have emails where she admits to changing logs. I have witnesses who saw her access my laptop without permission. I have teachers who warned me about her temper." Cutaway B-roll screenshots that moved too fast to be read closely. A blur of subject lines and file names. Back to his face. "I support women in tech," he said, and Nia felt that line strike her like a cold wave. "But this isn't about gender or race. This is about honesty. I'm asking you to consider that not everything viral is true. I'm asking you to stop sending me death threats. I'm 17. I want to build things. That's all." He didn't mention the override log. He didn't mention the admin token from his home IP. He didn't mention the 9 commits. The video ended on his face, lips pressed like a boy trying not to cry. In the cafeteria, phones lit up like a constellation at once. Ethan's clip darted through group chats and into the broader stream in under 5 minutes. It hit 100,000 views before 5th period, and then accelerated, pulled by the algorithm's appetite for a neat human story, with a soft-voiced protagonist. The comments multiplied. "He seems sincere. Why is she ruining him? This is what happens when clout chasers get receipts. Protect that kid." The captions varied, but the effect was the same. Ava looked at Nia, fury and fear fighting in her eyes. "He's turning himself into the victim." Nia stared at the screen. Something inside her went very still. A lake iced over in seconds. The clip had crossed 500,000 views. News accounts with blue checks began to embed it with neutral headlines that weren't neutral at all. "Student responds to accusations." Ethan's mother's fingerprints were on the framing. Nia could feel them in the smoothness of the language, the careful omission of detail. The mask of privilege which had been slipping all morning Found a new strap. Her phone buzzed again. A message from the tech reporter who DM'd her earlier. He's alleging doctored logs. Do you want to respond on the record? She typed, then deleted. Typed, then deleted again. Her mind moved to signatures, to hashes, to the tidy certainty of things that were either true or not. But the screen in front of her was a different system entirely. In this one, truth had to be staged, to be believed. The cafeteria noise seemed to dim around her. Nia looked up, and across the room, Ethan looked back. For one unguarded second, she saw the fear inside the performance. Then he raised his phone, and the mask slid back on like a hand settling into a glove. The view count ticked past 1 million, and the internet, ravenous and fickle, turned its full face toward her. Nia didn't sleep that night. The glow of her laptop lit the edges of her room like a stage she hadn't asked to stand on. Ethan's video was still climbing, 2.4 million views by 3 a.m., amplified by reaction clips, dissecting his tone, his hoodie, his "I'm just a kid" refrain. Some called him brave, others called her manipulative. She'd watched it twice, not for the performance, but for the holes. No mention of the override log, no mention of the server logs, just a swirl of temper, targeting, and witnessing. At 4 a.m. she opened a folder she'd been building since the first week of the semester. It contained every screen recording she'd ever made, while working on Safe Now. Not just code, but the sound of her own voice explaining what she was doing. Timestamps visible in the corner. Alongside them were the cryptographic hashes she'd emailed to herself the same nights. She knew one thing about the internet. Opinions could be argued, but receipts could travel without permission. At 6 a.m., before her parents even woke, she uploaded a 2-minute stitched compilation to her own public account. She titled it simply, "My Work on Safe Now, Judge for Yourself." The video opened with her cursor in the code editor, navigating through the core module. Her voice narrated, implementing the AES 25/6 key rotation. The timestamp in the corner read 10:48 p.m. February. Then the screen jumped to March 3, refactoring the alerts module for async. She scrolled to the section that had crashed during Ethan's demo. Her voice explained how it worked, line by line. The final clip was from 2 days before the presentation, running final integration test. All green checks. She didn't mention Ethan. She didn't call him a liar. She didn't need to. Within the hour, it was being reposted on Twitter, TikTok, and a subreddit dedicated to tech drama. Someone cut her narration into a quick explainer with captions in bold yellow text. Others slowed the video to freeze on her name in the commit history. The hashtag shifted. Justice for Nia gained momentum over Codegate. By mid-morning, the first wave of influential voices weighed in. A software engineer from Google tweeted, "As someone who reviews code for a living, this is airtight. The timestamps, the flow, the commits, all hers. Don't let charm outweigh evidence." A popular tech YouTuber posted a reaction video. "Y'all, this is not a vibe check. This is an audit." And she passed. A black woman who ran a coding bootcamp stitched Nia's clip with her own message. "To every girl who's been told she's too intense in group projects, document everything. Nia just gave you the blueprint." It wasn't all clean. Ethan's defenders accused her of lawyering the edit to make him look bad. Some claimed she was using fancy tech words to confuse people. But the balance had shifted. Under Ethan's original video, top comments started to turn. "Why didn't you address the logs? She's literally got video proof, dude." By lunch, her DMs were full. Some from strangers offering legal help, others from local news reporters. Ava texted her, "You're trending in the same tab as Beyoncé. This is surreal." It didn't feel surreal to Nia. It felt like defense. That afternoon, a LinkedIn post began circulating. From a mid-level manager at Apex Innovations, the tech firm that had offered Ethan an internship after the hackathon. The post was short. "At Apex, integrity is our foundation. In light of recent events and credible evidence, we are rescinding an offer made to a Jefferson High student pending further review. We encourage all young technologists to value collaboration and honesty above all else." They didn't name him. They didn't need to. Within minutes, screenshots of the post were everywhere. In group chats, and on Twitter, students dropped the same reaction gif, the mask from Scooby-Doo being pulled off a villain. Eva called. "This is it. He's done." Nia didn't answer right away. She'd learned enough to know that losing ground in public didn't mean losing the war. She imagined Lydia Blake in their kitchen, coffee steaming, Laptop open to a strategy doc labeled something like reframe. The proof was out. The tide had turned. But she could feel it in her bones. Ethan wasn't done. And she was right. At 4:17 p.m., a new post hit the same student forum, where the first clip had blown up. Title: What She's Not Showing You. The account was anonymous, but the tone was familiar. It included cropped screenshots of a chat window, a fake Slack conversation supposedly between Nia and another student, joking about breaking Ethan's build so I can fix it live. The timestamps were conveniently recent. The comments split instantly. Some laughed it off as bad Photoshop. Others clung to it like a lifeline for the story they'd already decided to believe. By dinner, a new hashtag had appeared alongside hers. What is Nia hiding? Nia sat at the kitchen table again. Soup going cold. Her laptop open to both her proof and the doctored messages. Her father leaned over her shoulder. This smells like desperation. It smells like planning, she said quietly. Her phone buzzed. An email from a tech journalist who'd been covering the story. I've traced the metadata on those screenshots. Do you want me to publish? She typed back. Yes, but make it bulletproof. Her receipts were strong. The public was watching. The internship was gone. But she knew Monday's hearing wasn't a popularity contest. It was going to be quieter, sharper, and far more dangerous. And Ethan, stripped of his biggest advantage, was about to fight like someone with nothing left to lose. By Saturday morning, the house felt like a command center held together by coffee and nerves. The living room table was a field of printed screenshots, server logs, and a yellow legal pad, where Nia had written 3 words in block letters: truth, process, calm. She kept tracing the letters with the side of her thumb, as if deeper grooves could anchor her through what came next. What came next arrived in a courier envelope, with a corporate return address, and a scent of cold paper. Darnell signed for it on the porch, skimmed the first page, and exhaled through his nose like a truck braking. They sent a lawyer, he said, handing it to Nia with more gentleness than the document deserved. The letter wore its threat, like cologne: cease and desist. It named Nia and her parents, and accused them of defamation, tortious interference, and computer fraud. It demanded she remove all videos, retract all statements, and immediately cease the publication of maliciously altered materials. It gave her 24 hours. At the bottom, under a signature in slick blue ink, it promised all remedies including damages, if she didn't comply. Alicia read it once, and made a sound that was part laugh, part disbelief. They want the sun to apologize for daylight. Nia's hands shook anyway, not because she believed she'd done anything wrong, but because the letter was designed to make a person her age feel small, to turn white space and legal phrases into a wall you were never meant to climb. If I post a response, they'll say I'm escalating, she whispered. You don't post a response, Darnell said. You get a lawyer. As if summoned by the sentence, her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Alicia's eyes flicked to the caller ID. Let it go. Nia answered. This is Nia. A woman's voice, warm and crisp. Nia, this is Mara Chen from ATL CivTech. We saw the letter you just received. A pause. I know because copies went to 3 newsrooms too. They want headlines that say student threatened with lawsuit before your hearing. Nia swallowed. I didn't share it. They did, Mara said. That's the trick. Make the threat public to make the target smaller. The good news, you don't have to answer it alone. I've looped in an attorney from a digital rights nonprofit and a volunteer from the Black Lawyers Association. Can you hop on a Zoom in 15? In the kitchen, Alicia mouthed. Who? Nia mouthed. Help. 15 minutes later, their faces filled the screen. Mara with a bookshelf backdrop. A woman in a navy blazer named Keisha Rowe, whose voice carried the calm of someone used to walking clients away from panic. And a man with a salt and pepper beard, named David Weiss, who introduced himself with, I fight takedown notices for breakfast. Keisha got there first. We've read the letter. It's a scare tactic. Defamation requires false statements. Your videos show your work, not claims about Ethan's interior life. Truth is a defense. Documentation is your friend. David shook his head with a half smile. And the computer fraud bit. They're waving the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act like a prop. You didn't exceed authorized access. You accessed your own code in school systems you were approved to use. Their attempt to stretch CFAA to cover embarrassment is creative, Mara added. They also filed DMCA takedowns on 2 of your clips claiming they own the project IP. Platforms might auto-remove. Will appeal fast. Nia stared at the grid of faces. They can just make everything vanish? Temporarily, David said. The law is a machine. Machines can be jammed. We'll file counter notices with your signatures and hashes. Platforms will pause the takedowns if they know a court fight's brewing, and you have receipts. A weight slid off Nia's chest. But another stayed. What about the lawsuit? Keisha leaned in. Georgia has an anti-SLAPP statute. SLAPP means strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's a way to silence people. If they file, we move to strike. If a judge agrees, they pay your fees. She paused. I know the legal language doesn't erase the fear. That fear is part of the tactic. But fear can be fuel if you point it. How do I point it? Nia asked. By staying factual, Keisha said. By refusing to meet emotional manipulation with panic, and by letting other people speak where they have reach. She glanced at Mara. We've already lined up statements from engineers and educators who can speak to your proof. You don't have to carry the whole argument on your back. Nia nodded slowly. Okay. Alicia, off-screen but close, asked. And if they go after her school standing? Mara's jaw tightened. That's where we widen the circle. The unexpected twist hit at noon. A push alert from a local outlet flashed across Nia's phone. School board to consider emergency discipline action. Amid viral code dispute, the article was thin on details and thick with quotes from concerned parents about online mob justice and hostile learning environments. It cited anonymous board sources who believed swift action was necessary. Alicia read it twice. Swift for who? Mara's phone lit up with messages. She muted quickly, then unmuted with a grim smile. I'm hearing Mrs. Blake has been busy. The board chair owes her 5 favors and a ribbon cutting. Nia's stomach flipped. Can they expel me? Before the hearing? They shouldn't, Keisha said. Policy requires notice and a chance to present evidence. But shouldn't isn't won't when politics gets loud. She breathed out. We'll get ahead of it, David. Draft a letter to the board reminding them of due process requirements and the retaliation optics. Mara, I'll call a friendly reporter to frame this as a slap in progress. Darnell cleared his throat. I never asked to learn the word optics as a father. Keisha's expression softened. I wish you didn't have to. They worked the next 3 hours like a relay team. David filed counter notices with direct links to Nia's hashes and the professor's corroborating thread. Mara coordinated statements from a half-dozen tech professionals ready to go on the record. Keisha drafted a response to the cease and desist that was both scalpel and shield. We deny your claims. We will not retract true statements. Any further attempt to intimidate a minor for speaking truth will be met with an anti-SLAPP motion and a request for sanction. She copied district council in the board. Nia did her part the way she knew how. She organized her evidence binder until it looked like a map, colored tabs marking every claim and proof. A thin stack of printed emails from the scholarship office taped together like a fragile bridge she refused to let collapse. By late afternoon, a small army had gathered in her mentions. Not loud, not slogan-heavy, just steady. Engineers explaining, lawyers demystifying, alumni reminding the district of its own policies. The story was still a circus in places, but a quieter current had emerged, receipts over vibes. Then the board posted the agenda for a special meeting, at 7 p.m. The single item, written with the sterile vagueness of bureaucratic panic, student conduct matter, action possible. Ava texted, I'm coming over. She arrived with a bag of snacks and a hug that didn't pretend to fix anything. If they put this to a vote, she said, we record, all of it. At 6:40, Principal Markham called. Her voice sounded like it had been wrung out, and hung back up. I want you to hear this from me, she said. The board chair added an action item after a round of calls this morning. The language is neutral. The intent is not. Can you stop it? Nia asked. I can make the record clear, Markham said. I can remind them our policy requires a hearing Monday, with evidence and representation. I can say the word retaliation into the microphone. But I can't control a vote. Who pushed this? Alicia asked, stepping into the frame. I'm not supposed to say, Markham replied. So I will say, donors have been very active. The meeting streamed online, with a camera that made everyone look slightly tired and slightly guilty. The board chair opened with 3 minutes about community standards and civility. Then Mrs. Blake took the podium during public comment and turned niceties into a blade. We are at risk of becoming a school that rewards online mobs and punishes leadership, she said, eyes shining like the lights were for her. We need to protect all students, including my son. She didn't say Nia's name. She didn't have to. Every sentence was a finger pointed through a velvet glove. When it was Markham's turn, she was quieter and stronger. We have evidence to review. We have a process. We are a school, not a stage, she said. Rushing to send a message, sends the wrong one. Keisha texted Nia, as the board shuffled papers. If they break policy, we file for an injunction at 9 a.m. Monday. If they discipline you tonight, we call the press in the morning. Breathe. Nia breathed. She watched the camera pan to the student representative, a senior with a pinched expression, who murmured, "If we punish someone for posting proof, what are we saying to the rest of us?" The chair moved to close comments. We'll proceed to item 3. Student conduct matter. A motion appeared on the screen, like a weather alert, to authorize the superintendent to impose immediate disciplinary action up to and including suspension or expulsion in cases of significant disruption, notwithstanding pending hearings. Ava whispered, "That's the whole play," Keisha typed. "That language is a sledgehammer," Mara added, "and it's custom fitted." In the chat window of the live stream, messages flew, parents arguing, alumni pleading, strangers dropping links to Nia's videos. The chair admonished the sidebar, then called for a vote to adopt the motion. Hands hovered. For a heartbeat, Nia saw them as metronomes, upstroke downstroke, measuring out the tempo of her next year. One member, a man with a teacher's lanyard still around his neck, cleared his throat. "Einbutter showed me the clip," he said into his mic. "The one with the logs. I can't ignore that. I vote no." Another, looking everywhere but the camera, voted yes. The chair voted yes. The tally wobbled on a knife. A woman at the end of the days who had been silent all night leaned into her mic. "I have a son," she said, glancing at the audience, "and I know what it means to be scared for him." She looked directly into the lens. "I also have a niece who is brilliant and tired of proving it twice. We cannot make policy by panic." The room stilled. She looked down at the motion on the screen, then back up. "I vote." The feed froze. For half a second it looked like a buffer hiccup. Then the chat exploded. "Stream down. Come on. Seriously?" Nia's phone lit with texts. "Is it my Wi-Fi? Did they cut it? What did she say?" The screen refreshed to a gray panel. "We are experiencing technical difficulties." A minute later, audio returned without video. Just enough to catch the board chair's voice. And with that, the motion passes. Nia stared at the laptop, heart thudding, the space around her suddenly too small for air. The message underneath the stream updated, bland as a form letter. "Board authorizes emergency disciplinary authority. Superintendent to confer immediately." Eva squeezed her arm so hard it hurt. They did not. Keisha's text landed like a gavel. "They did. They've given themselves the power to expel before Monday." David added, "We hold the line. Injunction first thing. Publish everything. No one buries this." Nia closed her eyes and tasted metal. Fear tried to climb her throat. She held it down and reached for the binder with the tabs, her fingers finding process like a talisman. If they wanted her silent, they were about to meet the loudest version of the truth. And somewhere in a room not on the stream, adults who thought they could bend a life with a vote were dialing phones, working to turn an emergency motion into a permanent erasure. The gym didn't feel like a gym anymore. The bleachers were pulled out to their last rib, the scoreboard black, the basketball hoops winched to the rafters like sleeping cranes. Folding tables formed a rectangle at center court. Cords snaked to microphones that squealed if anyone breathed wrong. Students filled the left side, parents and teachers the right. Reporters clustered at the baseline like a flock that had smelled weather, notepads, ring lights, lenses blinking. Nia sat at a small table with her parents, a binder in front of her like armor. Ava was 3 rows up, hands knotted around her phone. Principal Markham stood near the stage stairs with a stack of policy binders, already braced for impact. Across the floor, Ethan and his mother had claimed the opposite table, 2 bottled waters, a legal pad, a man in a navy suit with a briefcase clipped shut like a jaw. The board sat along the long side of the rectangle, the chair in the middle, the superintendent to his right, a district lawyer to his left. Beside them, the hearing panel, an assistant principal from another campus, an external educator from the community college, and the district IT representative, a woman in a charcoal blazer, whose expression gave nothing away. The chair tapped his mic. "We'll come to order." This hearing concerns alleged academic misconduct related to a senior capstone project. We remind all present, this is not a criminal proceeding. We will hear evidence. We will deliberate. We will issue a decision. He looked pointedly toward the press row. No flash photography. The murmur settled into a tight silence. The IT rep rose first. I'm Tasha Mensah, District Information Systems, she said, voice even. I will summarize technical findings in plain language. She gestured to a screen. The projector splashed white across the far wall. A familiar log appeared, stabilized by the gym's giant space, and the gravity of a district seal in the corner. Over the past 12 weeks, Mensah began. The school's Git server recorded 71 commits to the SafeNow repository, and 62 are attributable to the account Nia Carter with a verified cryptographic signature on the largest changes. 9 commits are attributable to the account Ethan Blake. The per-line attribution across core modules shows approximately 95% authored by Nia Carter. Time of day and IP logs corroborate evening work sessions from Carter's home network. A separate access using a restricted deployment token originated from the Blake residence at 12:43 a.m. On March 14, used to sign legacy files and overwrite visible author fields. She let the last sentence rest without embroidery. The assistant principal on the panel asked, can author fields be manipulated without affecting per-line attribution? Yes, Mensah said. That's why we don't rely on headers. The underlying history remains.
The community college educator leaned into her mic. Did you find evidence that Miss Carter hacked to create a false history?
No, Mensah said. Quite the opposite. Several of the major commits are signed with a private key published weeks prior. We verified those signatures against her public key. They are valid. A hush that wasn't relief. Not yet, just air being let back in. The chair nodded. Thank you. We'll hear from the students. Ethan's lawyer stood. Before my client is tried in the court of public opinion again, he said, emphasizing the phrase like a thesis, I want to object to the admission of social media materials. Viral videos cannot replace due process. No one's asking them to, Markham said from the side, calm but sharp. We're asking you to address the logs. The chair lifted a hand. We will. Mr. Blake, you may speak. Ethan stood, hands clasped in front of him, the boy-man posture he'd practiced in mirrors and Little League thank you speeches. I'm sorry we're here, he began, voice pitched to gentle contrition. I care about this school and this project. I made mistakes under pressure. I was told to take the lead, so I did. When things went wrong, I panicked and tried to fix them. If my choices looked like shortcuts, I apologize. But I did not try to steal. I did not try to hurt anyone. He looked at Nia for exactly 1 second, then back at the panel. I accessed the token because I thought it was allowed. Everyone knows where it is. Bad practice. Sure, but common. I care about results. Miss Carter is very talented, but she has been intense. She told friends she'd fix my build live. There are messages. All eyes slid to the lawyer. He lifted a folder. We have screenshots of conversations, indicating intent to embarrass my client. We ask that they be admitted. Keisha, at Nia's table in a blazer, crisp as a fresh sheet, rose with a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes.
We object.
Those images have already been analyzed by 2 independent journalists and a faculty media lab. The metadata shows they were created on a device owned by a parent volunteer at Blake and Anders' fundraising committee. Heads turned toward the parent section. A woman stiffened. The timestamps overlap with an internal draft labeled response narrative. The messages include fonts not used by the school's chat platform. They're forgeries. The IT rep nodded once. Confirmed. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. Lydia's gaze sharpened to a point. Admissibility is a legal matter, she said, her voice smooth as marble. We are here to protect a child from a smear campaign. And a young woman from erasure, Markham said, still not moving from her post. The chair gave a tight smile that asked everyone to behave. Miss Carter, he said, your statement. Standing felt like stepping onto ice. Nia rose, palms flat on the binder to ground herself. The gym's lights made everything too bright. In the back row, Mason from robotics lifted his chin at her like a tiny nod of contrition. Jamie stared straight ahead. She took one breath, then another. I built the core of SafeNow, she said. I can show you how every line works. And I have on video, over weeks. I recorded because I've learned to bring proof into rooms where people doubt me first. I didn't target anyone. I protected the work because I know what it's like to watch it float away. She swallowed. When the demo crashed, it was because the validation checks were removed. When the token was revoked, it was by the person running the laptop. When the author fields changed, it was from his house. She didn't look at Ethan. These are not feelings, they are logs. She clicked her binder open, slid 3 documents to the panel: a printed commit verification, the email hashes, the architecture PDF with the checksum in the footer. You don't have to like how I prepared, but please don't punish me for it. The community college educator's eyes softened just slightly. Thank you. A reporter's pen scratched a little faster. In the student section, a girl in a robotics hoodie wiped her eye before anyone saw. The chair exhaled through his nose. He looked along the panel. Questions? The assistant principal asked Nia something technical. She answered it in 2 sentences, plain and precise. The IT rep asked Ethan whether anyone else had access to his home network the night the token was used. He shifted. My parents. Our housekeeper. It could have been. Housekeeper logs out at 7. Lydia said swiftly, then softened it with a smile toward the board, as if this were casual trivia and not a tripwire. Then the twist entered the room, quiet as paper. The district lawyer stood, a new stack in hand. One additional item was delivered to my office this morning by an alum. She said, our district lecture capture system mirrors capstone repositories nightly to a teaching server for professor access. That server keeps a separate read-only history. She held up the printouts. It shows identical authorship to the school logs with one more thing. The projector changed. A chart appeared with a red dash across a line. It also shows a failed attempt to alter history from an admin-level account last night at 8:06 p.m. during the board's special meeting. The gym exhaled, as one organism. The board chair's jaw went tight. The superintendent's pen froze mid-air. Which account? The community college educator asked. The lawyer's voice stayed neutral. As a ledger. The account name traces to a shared credential in the superintendent's office. The IP is the district administration building. A sound rose. Part gasp, part growl, part oh, and then fell into a stunned quiet. The chair's face flushed in a slow bloom. That is outside the scope of this hearing, he managed. It is inside the scope of integrity, Markham said, not bothering to hide the steel now. If the public wonders why streams cut and votes rush, this is why. Lydia's lips curved, not into a smile but into that particular expression people wear when they realize the narrative they built is catching fire at the edges. The lawyer at her side scribbled on a legal pad in writing so tight it looked like stitching. The chair cleared his throat loudly, a man calling a meeting back to order inside a storm. We will take this under advisement. We will return to student conduct. He looked like he wanted a door to open under his chair. Public comment opened and closed in a blur. A teacher who had stayed late with students for years asking the board not to criminalize proof. A parent who warned against mob rule, with an eye toward the cameras. A senior who said softly, I learned to code because of girls like Nia. Through it all, Nia sat very still and tried to keep her breath steady. The power had moved, but power didn't like being moved in public. The panel withdrew to a corner table. The board huddled. Reporters angled for a better line of sight, and got shooed back by a custodian with a kind expression and a stern broom. Ethan stared at his hands. Lydia stared at the chair, willing him to remember every check written and every ribbon cut. Time turned viscous. The crowd shifted and unshifted. A baby cried somewhere in the parent section. Someone handed a bottle. The sound softened. The scoreboard over center court stayed dark. After 20 minutes that felt like 2 hours, the panel returned. The chair straightened his papers, performed the tiny rituals that make bad news sound procedural, and good news sound impersonal. He tapped his mic. It squealed. Someone adjusted a dial. Thank you for your patience, he said. We have reviewed the evidence and the policy. We are prepared to deliver our decision. Effective immediately. Effective immediately, the chair read, voice pitched to sound neutral, and landing like a dropped gavel. The panel recognizes Miss Nia Carter as the primary author and developer of the Safe Now project. Her grade will be recorded as A with full honors credit. Miss Ethan Blake is removed from the capstone program for academic misconduct. His recommendation letters issued under the project are revoked. Scholarship committees will be notified of the findings. Silence didn't break. It shattered. The gym became a sound. Gasps. The scuff of shoes. The low, stunned oh. from somewhere high in the bleachers. Reporters' pens began to scratch, as if they had been unpaused. On the student side, relief moved like a small wind through tight shoulders. On the parent side, an older woman whispered, "Finally," in a way that made the word sound like a prayer. Ethan didn't stand. He stared at the table, as if it might become a door. Lydia's hand gripped the edge so hard the wood complained. She raised her chin. "We appeal," she said, not to the panel, but to the room, as if the room were a court that recognized money as a filing fee. "We reserve the right to seek civil remedies." Principal Markham didn't pivot. "You may follow district procedure," she said evenly. "Today's decision stands." The chair cleared his throat, papers trembling just enough for the camera to catch. "Additionally," he said, eyes darting to the superintendent and away, "the board will request an external review of district IT controls and access to administrative credentials." He didn't say, and of the attempt to alter the teaching server last night. He didn't have to. The audience could hear the missing line in the beat, before the next sentence. "This hearing is concluded." The gym emptied the way as storm drains. Swirls, eddies, debris of conversations. Ava found Nia before the aisle found Nia, folding her in a hug that was brief and solid. "You did it," she said into her ear. "You did it, you did it." When she pulled back, her eyes were wet, "And you shouldn't have had to." Nia nodded once, the motion small, her face a glass surface with currents underneath. "I want a nap and a universe reset," she said, voice lightening on purpose. In that order. Mr. Higgins came. Shoulders rounded. Clipboardless. Up close, he looked like a man whose scales had slipped and bruised him on the way down. "Nia," he said, throat tight. "I was wrong." He didn't pile words on the admission. Didn't try to make it a lesson. Didn't reach for the comfort of "we were all wrong." He set his palms up as if offering something you can't see. "If you'll let me, I'll write the strongest letter I can about your code and your steadiness." She met his eyes, and something inside her, something that had spent years bracing, let go one notch. "Write one for the next girl too," she said, "and don't make her prove it twice." Higgins swallowed. "Yes." Reporters hovered, sensing a quote. Nia's attorney, Keisha, raised a subtle hand and shook her head. "Not now. Not this. Not her face under a headline that would shrink the story to a paragraph." They threaded through the crowd toward the exit, where Alicia and Darnell waited. The kind of tired pride that grows in hard soil. Darnell pulled Nia close by the shoulders and kissed the top of her head. "Let's get you home," he said. "The internet can talk to itself for a few hours, but the internet doesn't sleep. It refreshes." News alerts bloomed before they hit the parking lot. Board clear student coder. Donors Sun sanctioned. The phrasing neutral if you squinted, a little barbed if you didn't. The scholarship office, whose hold had sat on her chest like a weight, emailed at 3:11 p.m. Status reinstated. "We apologize for the distress. We look forward to your future." The closing line had been written by a lawyer, and a human in equal measure. At home, the table became a buffet of relief. Takeout containers, paper plates, soda sweating in plastic cups. Ava kicked off her shoes and flopped on the couch. Mara from CivTech pinged in with confetti emojis, then checked herself and sent words instead. "Proud of you. Res. We'll handle the follow-through." Keisha texted the phrase that had become a new hymn. Receipts over vibes. While Nia forced herself to eat something, her inbox became a hallway full of open doors. A recruiter from a major West Coast tech company. "Come build with us this summer. Paid remote, mentor, assigned. Your call." A smaller Atlanta startup. "We've been where you are. We want people who ship coffee." A civic tech nonprofit. "Your app solves a real problem. We can help you pilot in 2 schools if you want to keep ownership." An HBCU professor. "If you want a lab, we'll give you a lab, with your name on the door." And tucked inside the flood, a note from the comp sci professor who'd threaded her defense in public. "If anyone tries to dim you, send them my way." Victory tasted like citrus, bright, cutting, healing, and stinging at once. Nia read each message with care, then closed the laptop and lay back, staring at the ceiling. The cheap plaster had a seam that looked like a river. Alicia sat on the coffee table, facing her. "It's okay if you don't feel celebratory yet," she said. "Sometimes your body is still crossing the bridge after your mind has reached the other side." "I keep thinking about the part where it almost didn't matter what I showed," Nia said quietly. "How close it came to." She didn't finish the sentence. The sentence was a cliff where she would not look down. Eva picked at a takeout carton. The thing about receipts, they don't build themselves, she said. You built them while building the thing itself. That's 2 projects. No one applauds the second one until they need it. Darnell reappeared from the kitchen with a slice of store-bought cake that looked like joy in a plastic container. He set it down. You can have victory cake and rage cake, he said. Same slice. The unexpected twist arrived as a headline with no exclamation point. Superintendent places self on leave amid audit. The article was short, the kind of short that means a longer story exists and is afraid to be written yet. It mentioned a credentials mismanagement incident and an attempted access during a live stream outage. It did not mention the board chair. It did not mention donors. Comments under the article polarized instantly. Accountability versus witch hunt versus what about the real issue? Ava scrolled, sighed, tossed the phone onto a cushion. They'll find a way to make the system a victim of itself. On Sunday, the quiet after the storm settled in uneven patches. They turned the TV off and the radio on. Nia slept, then woke at 2 a.m., then slept again. The way the nervous system unlearns vigilance in a series of small negotiations. When morning came, she walked the neighborhood loop with Darnell, who pointed out early dog walkers, late blossoms, things that were not the internet. A neighbor in a sun hat waved and said, "Saw you on the computer," with the innocence of someone who didn't understand that the computer had been a battlefield. Nia waved back. The air smelled like rain that hadn't happened yet. Back home, she opened the laptop to a message from Apex Innovations, the company that had publicly rescinded Ethan's internship. "We're exploring a student integrity initiative," it read. "We'd like you to advise. Paid." The corporate tone was too clean to be real, but the opportunity was real enough. Beside it sat a different kind of offer, one from the civic tech nonprofit that wanted to pilot SafeNow under her ownership. "We don't want your story. We want your system. Keep your code. Let's make it save someone." The sentence reached past the noise and pressed a finger to the original reason she'd built anything at all. She wrote back to both. Yes to the civic pilot. Maybe to the company whose public virtue felt like a brand risk calculation dressed as ethics. Then a third message blinked from a small local foundation. "We fund girls who code in schools that forget they exist. Want to help us write a policy so no student has to carry a cryptographic backpack into a classroom again." That one made her smile, soft and private. By afternoon, Nia had become a symbol for people who loved symbols, and a person for those who had watched a person hold steady. She spent an hour replying not to big names, but to the black girls who had sent voice notes from bedrooms and dorms and buses. "You are not intense. You are precise," she wrote to one. "The room may be allergic to your pace. Keep it anyway. Save your hashes. Save yourself." She wrote to a boy too, who had said quietly, "I believed him until I saw the logs. I'm sorry for being part of the room. Be a different room next time." She replied, "Bring a chair." Late in the day, Nia walked back to school with Ava to retrieve a notebook she'd left in the lab. The building on a Sunday felt like a museum of itself. Trophy cases, reflecting empty hallways, bulletin boards fluttering, nobody's announcement. In the lab, someone had left a post-it on her keyboard. "Proud of you, Jay." The J could have been Jamie from robotics. It looked like his hurried handwriting, all elbows and angles. The apology was small and private, the right size for what it was. Mr. Higgins appeared in the doorway, hand raised like he was knocking on air. "I'm instituting a new thing," he said, half awkward, wholly earnest. "Commits signed. Presentations co-led or not led at all. And I'm meeting with the other teachers about tokens and who can see what. I should have done it sooner." "Do it for the ones coming," Nia said. "Not for me. For both," he replied, and left her to the hum of the machines. In the evening, the house filled with a few neighbors who didn't ask for a statement, just brought dishes and quiet. Alicia put a playlist on, old soul and new soul holding hands. The living room became a circle, Mar in a corner chair with her shoes off, Keisha laughing at a bad pun from Darnell. Ava and Nia pressed shoulder to shoulder on the rug like kids at a sleepover they'd earned. They toasted with ginger ale in mismatched glasses. "To receipts," Keisha said, clinking. "To rest," Mara added. "To cake," Darnell insisted. "To coding what you want to exist," Ava finished. Nia clinked last. "To never being surprised by the obvious again." Her phone, face down on the coffee table, buzzed. She almost didn't turn it over. When she did, the subject line was plain, unadorned, the kind of text that carries its own frost. From unknown sender. Subject: don't get comfortable. She opened it. No greeting. No signature. Just one line. No punctuation. They're not done with you. The email stayed in her inbox. Unread a second time. The way you leave a stone on the path so you know it's there. Nia didn't delete it. Didn't forward it. Didn't let it own more space than it deserved. It wasn't the first warning she'd received in her life. And it wouldn't be the last. She decided it would be an underscore, not a full stop. 2 weeks after the hearing, she stood in the Jefferson High computer lab. The same room where she'd first opened the Safe Now repository. Where Ethan had once leaned back in his chair and said, "Don't worry, I've got it from here." The lab looked different now. The district I team had installed two-factor authentication on every account. Mr. Higgins had a new sign taped above the monitors. "Every commit tells a story. Make yours true." In the front row, 3 middle schoolers sat cross-legged on the floor. Laptops balanced on their knees. They were here for the first meeting of the Next Gen Coders Mentorship Program, an after-school partnership between the civic tech nonprofit and Jefferson High's computer science department. Nia had agreed to lead the pilot. 1 hour a week teaching code but also teaching defense, version control, digital receipts, documentation habits. No one bothers to mention until it's too late. "You don't have to explain everything you do," she told them. "But you should be able to prove everything you did." She kept her tone light, but the words carried the weight of the year. A girl named Aaliyah, who wore a robotics hoodie 2 sizes too big, raised her hand. "Is it true you caught somebody stealing your code?" Nia smiled faintly. "I caught the truth. It's harder to steal than you think, but easier than it should be." In the weeks that followed, the program grew. Word traveled fast, not because of flyers, but because older students told younger ones. "She'll teach you the real stuff. The stuff that keeps your name on your work." They came from every grade, from schools across the district, some riding 2 buses just to get there. The school board, for all its bruised pride, moved quietly in the background. The emergency disciplinary authority motion disappeared from the policy manual. In its place was a new section: academic integrity and student rights in collaborative projects. It required clear authorship tracking, shared leadership in presentations, and protected channels for students to report suspected tampering without fear of retaliation. The district didn't send out a press release, but Markham made sure Nia saw the PDF. "Small print can be a big victory," she said, sliding it across her desk. Not all the changes were structural. Some lived in the way people carried themselves. Jamie from robotics started showing up to the mentorship sessions, not as a participant but as a helper, setting up laptops and untangling cords before disappearing quietly into the back row. Ms. Higgins began requiring every team to run a show your work demo before competitions. Even Mason, who had once rolled his eyes at Nia's intensity, asked her to review his portfolio before submitting it to a summer program. The broader world didn't forget either. Safe Now launched its pilot in 2 Atlanta schools, with students using it to flag unsafe building exits and anonymously report harassment. Local news covered it with the headline "From Classroom Conflict to Community Safety." A tech journalist in San Francisco wrote a feature on the Black girls' code that couldn't be erased, framing Nia's work as part of a larger lineage, from Katherine Johnson to Kimberly Bryant. Nia didn't feel like part of a lineage. She felt like someone who had dragged herself across a finish line and then been handed a second map. But she accepted the role. She visited coding boot camps, answered DMs from first-year comp sci majors, recorded short videos breaking down basic Git commands and why they mattered. Each time she said the words "commit often, document always," she felt the muscle memory of every night she had done exactly that. One afternoon, while packing up after a session, she found a folded sheet of notebook paper on her desk. In blocky handwriting, it read, "I didn't think I could do this. Now I think I can. Thank you. No name, no contact." She slipped it into the back of her binder, behind the section marked "Evidence," a different kind of proof. Her parents noticed the change in her. The tension in her shoulders had eased, though it never fully left. Darnell called it her battle stance, the way she still instinctively saved 3 copies of every file she touched. Alicia teased her about the tabbed binders, then started using one for her own work projects. Spring slid into summer. The civic tech nonprofit extended her contract, and the HBCU professor emailed again. "Your lab offer still stands." She didn't answer right away. She liked the idea of staying where the fight had been, turning that scarred ground into a workshop. But she also liked the idea of building in a place that had expected her to lead from the start. One night in June, she sat at the kitchen table long after everyone else had gone to bed. The Safe Now dashboard glowed on her screen, showing a spike in usage from one of the pilot schools. She clicked into the report. A student had used the app to flag a broken gate in the girls' dorm. It had been repaired within 48 hours. She thought of the anonymous note, of Aaliyah in her oversized hoodie, of the middle schoolers who would never know how close she'd come to losing the thing she'd built. She thought of the email that still sat in her inbox, "They're not done with you," and decided it didn't matter whether they were. What mattered was that she was not done, either. In the quiet, the only sound was the rhythmic tap of her fingers on the keys. The cursor blinked in a new file, a stripped-down open-source framework for student-led safety tools. She named the repository Legacy. Outside, the streetlight flickered. Inside, the glow of her laptop lit her face, reflecting in eyes that were tired but steady, the kind that could watch storms form on the horizon and still keep typing. She knew another battle was coming, and she was already writing the code for it. If you've ever been told to stay quiet when you knew the truth, you already know Nia's fight. Every voice that speaks up makes it harder for injustice to hide. Type yes if you believe in justice.